What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and Locals, Patreon. And all of these, all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to, provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. Julian, Dave, thank you so much for doing this. It's a conversation I've been looking forward to, and I appreciate you both making yourself available. This is Dave, I don't know, your 85th appearance or something at this point on my show.
We're moving to scientific notation.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Michael. I'm glad I can make my first appearance while Dave's making his 185th.
Well, I thought it'd be appropriate, to have both you guys do introductions. Now, my audience knows Dave, but even just for you, Julian, a little bit of Dave's background and, who he is. So, Dave, you first. This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. With Vaulted, I literally just tap a button and bam, I own physical gold stored in a professional vault. I can also take delivery at any time. Extremely simple and less expensive than any other method. The do-it-yourself way to buy precious metals. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. I mean, look at how easy this is. The Vaulted app on my phone, I can access it at any time.
So I'm an organic chemist at Cornell. Nothing but chemistry until the mid-90s. I mean, when I say nothing, I mean 8-hour-a-week chemistry. And then as a boomer, decided I had to take the accumulated wealth that apparently only us boomers have and are now the scourges of society for accumulating it. And I started paying more attention to markets, which I was going to go to Wall Street as a kid. It's interesting. I noticed you worked for a bank, and
I did.
And I was really interested in it, and somehow I just got off that path. And so it's a natural for me. So I started reading about it, and by mid-98, I realized the markets were completely fucked up and that something was going wrong with them. And so I pulled all my mutual funds, pulled half of them, and then said if it comes back after it took a dive after that. So I pulled it out July, took a dive down about a 50% cut. I said, that comes back, I'm getting the rest out. This is fucked. And so I came back, and so by mid-99, I didn't own a single share of a stock or a mutual fund. And where I got uber lucky is I for some reason, and it was tied to Y2K, went really long gold, and I actually shorted the market, which I don't advise anyone to do. Shorting's for retards and pros, and I think the Venn diagram of those two is about a 90% overlap. So I bought gold, and I started buying energy to fight inflation through the knots. And while everyone was getting their asses kicked just because of a fear of inflation, I compounded 13% a year during the knots, which was a brutal decade for most people. And so in '09, I was on a chat board, and we would chat, and we'd get like 200 exchanges per post sort of thing. And some very famous guys were there. Guys like Chris Martenson was there, Adam Taggart, guys from Goldman, guys from Fidelity. They were there, usually posting under names like Yogi Bear and shit like that. But I wrote something up, and then I got a ridiculous number of clicks. And I said, well, what happened? He said, I put on my blog. And so in '09, I wrote a thing called a year in review, where I said, fuck it, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm just going to write up what I've done and how I think about shit. And it just went bananas. It just the first one, I got emails from guys like David Einhorn, and they just are rolling in. And now we have dinner about once a year together, just to chat and stuff. He's really a special guy. And he's very smart. And so ever since, I've been writing this thing, and it appears to be popular. It appears to catch people. I run into people, currency traders from Singapore, and she'll say, "Oh yeah, I read that every year," that sort of thing. So, in any event, that got me in the podcast circuit, and I am congenitally contrarian. So as an undergrad, I was a bio major, decided to go into organic chemistry for laughs instead of going to med school and things like that. And so it's natural for me to say you're all fucked up. I have no trouble standing in front of a crowd and saying, I could stand in front of 12 central bankers and say, I think you have it all wrong. I have that odd capacity, which means I'm either completely fucked up or whatever, but I'm not afraid to piss against the current. And if you look at my Twitter feed, it says conspiracy theorist because I detest the phrase conspiracy theorist as a pejorative. I detest it. I detest it. In fact, I was taught by an NSA analyst. He said, I don't like to give details on some stuff because then you'll stop thinking. And so if I say Bill Gates created the virus, you'll say, okay, what's for dinner? And you're done thinking. He said, I like to think of it as a self-assembling oligarchy that's really hard to understand. And so I realized his message was, never draw a conclusion that causes you to stop thinking. That's why I don't like phrases like uniparty, because it's a very lazy way of just saying fuck it. And so I've been doing this. I do probably 150 podcasts a year, and the high water mark is I went on Tucker, and then the higher water mark is when I quoted George Patton and pissed off the Zionists because Patton said we should have fought Stalin instead of Hitler. So I referred to it as a mini Daryl Cooper, where I dug into World War II and said, okay, the World War II narrative's fucked up. And next thing I know, I got the head of the JNS and shit calling me a Holocaust denying Nazi, and Mark Levin ripping me, and Ted Cruz ripping me, and Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer. I call her the master of clickbaiting, which I shortened to masturbator. And it was a little staggering. Actually, the big leagues, I said, Dave, do you really want to be in the big leagues? Do you really want to be Tucker Carlson or Nick Fuentes or whatever? And it wasn't obvious to me that was a win. So, but this year I'm going to write about Israel and write about Kirk and things like that. So I'm going back into the big leagues, I guess.
Well, and I want to get into some of that stuff with you guys, but I also, before
I want to hear about Julian.
Yeah, Julian. Yeah, we want to know about your background.
Who the fuck are you? By the way, I picked you out. I rode in a cab once where there was a guy from New Jersey, and this personality type. He is the guy who every single thing he says is a wisecrack. So I call it white boy rap. And
white boy rap.
And you sit there, and at one point I interjected something. Goes, oh, we got a clown here. You know the type, right? You know the type. You have some of that.
I think I do.
I think you do. I think I referred to your shit-eating grin. And
yeah, that was one of the funniest taglines. That whole description. I was like, I gotta hang that on the wall. I don't know if I should be embarrassed or thrilled or
no. It was a compliment, but it was New Jersey. I recognized it, and I said, oh boy, I've seen that before. And so
yeah. But
I've been following you. But one more thing. What really caught my attention finally once and for all was your Joe Kent interview. Not because I was on an interview with Joe Kent, and he was, I had so many questions, and I don't want to go into it because I don't want to hammer other podcasters, but it got all fucked up. And I was pretty upset that we blew the chance to talk to Joe because someone else took control. And then you had Joe Kent for 4 hours. I thought that was the most amazing 4-hour interview I'd ever listened to. That was truly extraordinary. And that's what caught my eye. And what caught my eye, and I was going to ask you whether you wanted me to do this before I did it, but I was going to poke the booking agent at Tucker to get your ass on there. But I didn't want to do it without you knowing. So in any case, that was what really caught my attention, is that you could stay with him. That was what caught my eye. You were able to stay with him.
Well, I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, Joe, I watched kind of like a hawk right when he came out to see, like, okay, what is this?
Mhm.
And the first 2 or 3 weeks, it just would blow me away how he would just tweet out very matter of fact, emotion removed, analytical. Here's what's happening. Here's what will happen if X happens. Here's what will happen if Y happens. This is why we need Z to happen. And I would watch it and he would have it like Nostradamus every time. So I reached out to him maybe like 3 weeks out. Well, he had reached out to me and said, thanks for talking about some of the stuff he was doing. And I was like, hey man, I'm impressed so far. I know you're doing a lot of podcasts. When you want to do one down the line, we'll do it. Okay. And then we talked in like June, and at that point, it had been a few months removed from him being on Tucker and some of the shows right when he came out. And so we went and did it. But we all were. I mean, I had Deef in here. Amanda, who works with us, is in here. And then Deef's brother, Andy, was in here as well. And we were all pretty blown away with Joe for sure. But Michael, I know you were asking like for a little bit of the background. I'll give the quick, I guess, cliff notes.
Take as much time as you need, Julian, because Dave and I both were like, who we want to know who you are. Like,
Okay.
The world does.
So I came out of college and I had no fucking idea what I wanted to do. I had a degree.
Bucknell, is that correct?
I went to Bucknell.
The
Yeah.
internet's a clogged mess of contradiction, by the way. I tried to look you up, and there's a mess out there.
There is? All right. You got to show me where the
well,
mess is.
one has you graduating from college in London. One has your birthday in a range of 6 years. I mean, there's really some
All right,
crazy
I
shit
gotta
out
look
there.
at that. Yes.
You're a hard
All
guy
right,
to.
so, well, let's clear that up. I've never been to London except to Heathrow Airport for layovers. I was born in 1993. I graduated from Bucknell in 2015.
Okay.
I came out of Bucknell, had no idea what I wanted to do. I had never lived outside of New Jersey besides in college when I lived at Bucknell in Pennsylvania. But I was a South Jersey guy by Philly my whole life. That's where all my family's from. I ended up in North Jersey working for a friend, one of my friends, his father worked at Bank of America Merrill Lynch in the private bank. So to put that in English, he managed ultra high net worth individuals, some large privately held companies, and then some public companies as well. If clients were related to that, he could do things, everything from like a 10b5-1 plan for options sales of insider executives that has to be done through the SEC and all that, all the way down to something really simple like a 401k, which is like kind of a joke to run that. But we were like, the center of their financial life. And I figured out about a year or two in, I loved my boss. I loved the people we worked with, and I loved the social aspect of the job because half my job was like to go into New York City and get to know people, like who does what, who talks to who, why, how industries work, what's happening out there. And this is where you get the language of the real world, right? Like one of the gripes, I think people have a lot of legitimate gripes with college and the college system these days, for sure. One of the gripes that I disagree with is when they're like, well, college doesn't prepare you for the real world. My thought more is that college should give you the language to be able to speak and go out there and then experience things and put yourself in situations and learn that way. And to me, I was very lucky. I felt like I don't have a single complaint in the world about Bucknell. I thought it was.
Did you work hard in college?
I got by, I guess, like on some smarts or whatever you want to say. Like I worked hard, but I definitely had a really good time. I got good grades though, but I thought the education was excellent. I did know at the end of it, I'd been looking at maybe doing grad school at some point, but once I graduated, I'm like, I think I'm done with the school part. I want to go out and do things. So I did do that, and I loved working with Larry and all that. But like banks, this is like the most stereotypical example of like the worst things about corporate America. At a bank, you'd go to take a shit and you'd have to ask permission for toilet paper. I mean, it made no sense. Like there were just rules everywhere. I'm not like a finance guy. I'm a creative guy. This is something I never like. I mean, I should have put this together. I mean, my whole life, if you look at everything I ever did, it was always creative. It was not numbers crunching. So that was kind of dumb on my part, but I figured out like, okay, that's not really where it is. And so I had these side LLCs in the 5 years that I was working there, where I would work with friends that I connected with who were doing cool shit in marketing, media, stuff like that. Eventually led to me doing some, kind of came out of nowhere, but these on-site interviews at the Maxwell Football Awards in March 2019, and then at a big conference in New York City in June 2019. And I really had the bug for that. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I got to the summer 2019, and basically, like, when you say Wall Street, obviously this can mean, as you well know, Dave, a million different things. Like, whenever people say, yeah, I worked on Wall Street, it's like, okay, were you in the back office? Did you work in underwriting? Did you work in, it's a million things. My part of the industry, the way it worked, as best as I can tell, is that you come out of college, you grind like a dog for 4 or 5 years. You buy a Joseph A. Banks suit and tell people it's a bigger suit if they ask. You don't have any money, but you can pay your bills. And then if you do a great job and you make it through, you get the offer. And now you go to make a lot of money. And so I got to that point, and my boss, like I said, was like another dad to me. So we were really tight. And he gave me a really generous offer in summer 2019. And I was like, I love you. I can't take this. I could technically take it and collect money for 2 years and then get the fuck out of here, but I would never do that to him ever. Like, that would just be like a very disloyal thing to do. And that just goes against everything I believe in. So I was like, I can't do this. I got to start over. He was sad. I think he kind of saw it coming. But basically, over the next 6 months at that point, leading up to the pandemic, I was on the job trail trying to switch industries, go into things like marketing and stuff like that, applying for jobs that paid 38 grand a year in New York City. I had no delusions of grandeur. I was like, I will start at the bottom rung. Like, that's cool. Like, I'll eat ramen, start at the bottom rung, and then work my way up and learn something new. Like, I was very eyes wide open about that part. Still got my ass kicked on that job trail because, like, some of the recruiters I would talk to, they'd be like, this is so interesting. But, like, you're 25, 26 years old. I was 26 years old, and you're coming from a bank. It's easier for me to place a position like this when it's a 22-year-old coming out of a basic college with a marketing degree. So, like, it's just, it's more thinking than I need for these roles to place. Like, that's kind of the problem you're running into.
Yeah, overqualified.
Right. Yeah. It was a strange thing because, like, I had my side work, but it was side work. So what do you really say with that? So I was making a little bit of headway, and a couple things happened. First, in January, a buddy of mine, he ran a lacrosse company where he trained really high-end middle school and high school lacrosse kids. And so he was running this big all-day indoor.
Let me insert something right there. Yeah. What are your sports? I look at body shapes, and I ask people, what are their sports?
What do I do now? I box.
What are your sports? So what were your sports? What did you grow up doing?
I didn't grow until I was like 16, so I was 17, so I was really short. Now I'm 6'1", but I grew up playing soccer. I played some basketball. I played baseball. I played a little bit of lacrosse at one point. I just didn't really like that much. And I never played football because I was always too small. And I ran some cross country over the years. Like, I could do that at the same time as soccer during the fall season, so I did that. And I played golf. And then when I was 21, I got really into boxing, and that's what I train very hard now, but, like, I train boxing a lot as well, like, for fun.
Side note, I love boxing.
Yeah, I know. That's really interesting.
I did the first podcast with Freddie Roach. If you know who Freddie Roach is?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, of course. Legend.
Yeah, he
very cool.
8 years ago, we did it in Wildcard Gym down in Hollywood. I used to go watch Manny Pacquiao train down there.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I love, but the gym that I was in, and actually they just reopened up, and I it's 40 minutes away, but I still joined it. It's my favorite place ever. The gym I joined right after college when I moved up to North Jersey, because I didn't know anyone in North Jersey except my boss. So I built my whole life up here, which was really cool. But the gym was like it's like a Rocky Balboa kind of garage gym, and it's all the best power lifters in the state. And then in the back is an Olympic boxing ring and everything you need for boxing. And it's like a bunch of pro fighters and high-level trainers. It was like the coolest place. But I just used to go back there and train with guys who were just unbelievable. Like, if I stepped in a ring with them for 5 seconds, I'd be dead, kind of thing. And that was just really cool.
You should get Manny Pacquiao on your show.
I would love to talk to Manny Pacquiao. He's another legend.
I think he's living out in California. or spends a good amount of his time in California. And he
I
was
would
in
100% do that.
he was in New York for the finals or the championship round or whatever. I remember seeing him.
That would be cool.
Yeah. So sorry, we went off track, but yeah, I had to
No,
bring that up
all
to you
good.
about that.
There is no track. This is the track, Mike.
This is the track.
We could do a whole separate conversation about
where
boxing.
we differ
Julian.
is my adult sport. So I actually did gymnastics more than any sport, but I also did a bunch of the other ones. Yeah, I was.
You gonna do a split for us right now, Dave?
I could do a split. It's just it would be the last thing. Back there. Be the last thing I ever did. I could do a split when I was 40 years old.
That's amazing. I can't do that.
Not because of gymnastics. I did gymnastics in college, then it got too busy, so I said, fuck it. I coached the gymnastics team when I got here, but then I took up Taekwondo. So you went to boxing, I went to Taekwondo.
Great, all that stuff. All that stuff's amazing.
And did that till I was about 40, and then back surgery and all sorts of shit. And so I'm preparing for sumo.
There you go. All right. Well, I think where I was my buddy was hosting that all day lacrosse thing indoors, like a big camp for all these kids. It's a good friend of mine, Ty Martin, and he said to me, he was like, "Hey, can you come down and interview me on camera at this event? We're going to have all the professional lighting and all that. It's a really sick indoor space." And he's like, "I'd love for you to really get my story." And he was an amazing lacrosse player, played in college, played for...
Who do you play for?
He played for, was it Rollins down in Florida? I might have fucked that up. Okay, one of the Florida schools that's smaller but has a big lacrosse program. And then he played for the Hungarian national team because his father's from Hungary. So really serious lacrosse guy. But he said, "I want you to do the whole thing with me on camera." I'm like, "The whole story? Like, you're going to have like a lot of kids and their parents there." And what I meant by that is, he's a great guy, but he was in college. He had gotten caught doing like some PEDs and stuff like that. And he's like, "No, I want to be real about this. I want to talk about my mistakes and fuck ups as well so that these kids can understand what I did right and what I did wrong." So I said, "Okay, we can do that." So it's scheduled for Sunday, January 26, 2020. My buddy got married the night before I was in the wedding. We were out till fucking 7 a.m. So that was down that way. I was living up in North Jersey, but this was going to be in South Jersey, and my parents lived in South Jersey. So I went back to my parents' house the next morning, and I'm like, "All right, fuck, I got to do this." So I'm like, "All right, let me go downstairs, ride my mom's elliptical, and like try to sweat this out." And I get off the elliptical. I got to leave in about a half hour, and I get the notification that Kobe Bryant just died. And I was like, what? Like, I was freaked out because I was also on the elliptical listening to a montage, an 11-minute, 37-second, I think, montage of his with the music in the background on YouTube of an interview he had done with Patrick Bet-David 5 months before that just was amazing. And it was really trippy because like I was like, whoa, that's bizarre. And Kobe was from Philly. I'm a huge basketball fan. Like he's one of the all-time greats. It was just a really weird feeling. So I get to the camp, and it ends up being that we're not going to film till about 10 o'clock that night. So I'm at the camp the whole time with him, watching him do his thing. And then we get in there and we film, and they kind of turn all the lights off and turn the professional lights on. And we get it for 35, 45 minutes, whatever it was. And at the end, the lights go on, and like 35 people are there, and they're all like clapping, and they're like, "Oh my God, that was amazing." And I had all these people come up to me, and they're like, "Bro, do you have a podcast?" I'm like, "No, I don't."
That was number one right there.
Yeah, I'm like, "No, I don't have a podcast." And like, "You need a fucking podcast." Now, I had heard this a lot of times before, but I always was like, "What the fuck am I going to do with a podcast? Who the hell's going to listen to me?" So remember, I'm in the middle of this job trail. It's going terribly. I'm very lost in life. I feel like a loser. And so I'm driving home that night to North Jersey. It's about an hour and a half, 40-minute drive in silence. And I'm just thinking about like the whole day, like, God damn, Kobe Bryant's daughter really died today. Like, I don't know. Like there was just something about it that was just like very spur of the moment. And so I had this idea in my head. I was like, all right, if I did a podcast, I'd do it right. I'd have a studio, like the whole bit, whatever. That's the only way I could do it. So without even thinking about anything, which is very strange because I'm a chronic overthinker, I made it my Saturday afternoon hobby over the next 4 weeks to go to B&H, the one in Fairfield, New Jersey, and like just study all the equipment and then go home and study it on YouTube and whatever, and like have this little side hobby of, if I did a podcast, here's how I do it. And then my dumbass spent whatever little money I had, and I mean like all of it, on this equipment on March 4th, 2020. So if you remember, the world
You're
started
also
ending.
photographic, dude. I've noticed this. You pull fucking dates and times and facts out. I've noticed this in all of your God. That's how you kept up with Joe Kent, because you read about the Middle East and it sticks.
Yeah, I do have a photographic memory, like a little bit audio visual, which is kind of cool. I didn't know everyone didn't have that until Danny Jones told me that like a few years ago. He's like,
How'd you meet Danny? How'd you meet Danny?
Danny and I actually he reached out to me on Twitter 4.5 years ago, about 3 weeks after someone had told me about him. And I had been watching his podcast while I was editing. And I was like, wow, this guy's great. And then he reached out to me. It was very, I guess fortuitous. And then he and I were best friends right away. That's my guy. But
he's excellent. He's excellent, by the way. Not to interrupt you, but my friend Mary Bowden and Jack Cruz. Yeah. Jack's been on here a couple times. Mary's been on a bunch. That conversation with Casey Means was outstanding. Then he had Chris Gillette on.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Danny. Danny's the truth. Danny doesn't get the respect he deserves at all. I've been saying that for years. Danny's really fucking good at the job.
Excellent.
Like, really good.
And that Mossad assassin.
Oh, that was the funniest one ever. That's
amazing. I would have run out of the room. I mean, that guy scared the shit out of me just watching him. Holy crap. Yeah, I think of you and Danny is very similar too. So that's why I was interested in how you guys got to know each other, because you're almost twin separated at birth in some ways.
Yeah, don't tell him that. He gets
here's one that's going to get me killed. Have you ever seen Tommy G and Elliot Page in the room together?
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that. Tommy G is one of my best friends.
I know.
He's gonna be more upset at that than Danny is when people say it looks like me. Danny's like, you think I look like that Jersey trash?
Does he get that a lot? Does Danny get that a lot?
Oh, he gets hot about that.
Yeah. Oh, he does?
Oh, yeah, he gets hot about that. He don't like that too much.
So people have seen that.
Yeah, he's very anti New Jersey medic for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah, he loves just throwing.
No offense, Tommy, and don't come and kill me.
Yeah.
And definitely don't send an Israeli Mossad guy after me.
That's right.
He was scary. He was scary.
But I order everything on March 4th, 2020. And then I was still working on Wall Street at the time. My boss was so cool. When I turned down the offer, he's like, all right, don't tell the company. You do great work. You can stay here and pay your bills, and I'll help you out however I can to get you a new job. So I was still working there. And the world was like ending that week before quarantine started, where the stocks are just boom. So I forgot I ordered everything. Then the first day of quarantine, March 13th, 2020, I get the notification. Your equipment has arrived from Amazon, has arrived downstairs. So I was like, oh, fuck. So I go downstairs, I get all this equipment, I bring it up, I put it on the couch, and I'm like, oh my God, all my job prospects that I finally was getting just dried up. I have no money. What the fuck? The world's ending. And I'm just looking at this equipment, and I don't know how long it was. I was standing there. It wasn't 10 minutes or anything. It's probably like 30 seconds or a minute. I'm just looking at this equipment, and I'm like, Julian, you've done a lot of stupid shit in your life, like a lot. But this is definitely the stupidest thing you've ever done.
What was the total cost?
God, I couldn't even tell you. It had to be $8,000 or $9,000, something like that. And that was literally all I had. I never had. There was no point until maybe like a year and 2 years ago, something like that. There was no point where I ever had more than $10,000 like in my bank account. Like I maybe I got to 11 or 12. That's probably about where I was when I bought this equipment. So I should say 15 to be a little safer, but not a lot. And so I then looked at it and I said to myself, I said, well, the world just ended. Your job prospects are gone and you got this shit here now. I guess you got to go for it. And I went into
perfect timing.
Yeah,
actually.
I went into full mode. And then I got two really important phone calls. The first one, I don't remember which was first, actually. I've said that before. I can't remember which one came first, but they were both like the same day or a couple days apart. One of the calls came from my boss, and he goes, I take it all your job prospects just dried up. I said, yeah. And he goes, all right, listen, we're going back to the office. We're not going back till April or May. They still thought we were going to go back by then at this point. Why don't you we got
Stay
everything
on payroll.
good. He's like, you stay on payroll. If I need you an hour a day, I'll use you and you can pay your rent. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. Thank you. And so that ended up being like, we weren't in the office at all. So I got to ride that for about 6 months. And then my dad called me from South Jersey and he said, do not re-sign your lease. Just come home on April 1st because my lease was coming up. And I was thinking at that point about maybe re-signing it. And he said, just come home. This is going to be a year. I was like, Malaka, a year? They're saying 2 weeks to stop the curve. He's like, no, they love this. They love this control. This is going to be a year. And he turned out to be 100% right.
My family did exactly the same thing where we intercepted key players and said, just come straight to Ithaca. Just don't. Just bring your shit, bring your dogs, get over here.
Bring your shit and get over here. So that's what I did. I packed up the U-Haul, went down there, and I'm unloading the whole U-Haul. And then I put all the podcast equipment like downstairs, I think like by the basement. And my dad looks at it. He doesn't even know what a podcast is. He's like, what the fuck is that?
Fucking boomer.
And I was like, exactly. I was like, well, think about doing a podcast. He's like, a podcast? I'm like, yeah. And he pointed at the back room when we got upstairs and he said, well, that's open. If not now, when? So I built a studio back there that I was really proud of in a room that wasn't built to be a podcast studio, but we made it work and I thought it looked great. And I just was 24/7. I went head down. I released the podcast publicly with 10 episodes on one click on September 15th, 2020, because I wanted to show people I wasn't fucking around. And I taught myself all the production, everything. And I was like just around the clock building this privately without anyone knowing. I really didn't tell almost anyone except a couple of my best friends who came over. They got to see it, but most of my best friends didn't even know I was doing it. And then I just went with it and people were like, wow, you're really going for this. And I was like, fuck yeah. So I didn't think people would come over to do it. I thought I was going to have to do like 35 solo episodes before anyone would agree to do it. But when I released the first 10, 8 of them were solos. One of them was like a, fun little sit down with my cousin because I was producing music for her at one point when I was building the studio. And so we just talked for an hour after creating a song for her. And then another one was with my buddy Terrence to talk about all the shit that had happened that summer in the world. And I had a lot of people hit me up like, yo, bro, I would come in and talk. And at the time, like I had no delusions. I was like, my requirements are, can you breathe and can you talk? Like, if you can do those two things, we got a winner. We'll do 3 hours. Right. We'll set the precedent with that. It's always in person. It's always in my studio. I will never do anything differently, but I'll never reach out to someone real and ask them to come on until I've built something. So the first 86 episodes were just all friends and like people I knew or people I quickly got connected to. But I just started making content over and over. And then what really did it, and I tell people, I'm like, it wouldn't matter if I was terrible at this job or great at this job or whatever you think. The only reason I exist is because I realized no one in podcasting was making short form content. Those who were on TikTok were doing 1080 by 1350 size, repurposing basic content from like an Instagram post before they had reels. They weren't even doing captions sometimes. And most shows just didn't do any of it. And so I'm like, fuck, I'm going to make documentaries. And I created the podcast shorts industry, if you will, as far as like that
when
style.
You say shorts, clarify that. You mean shorts in addition to the long form?
Right. The shorts are the marketing for it. I'm like,
that's why I want to make sure I understand. The ones that you put out 2 or 3 hours at the same time put out chunks.
Right. But I would spend 35 hours on a 35-second clip. And that's why it would do 50 million views on YouTube. I was so anal and OCD about it. And like, because there was no example. I was setting the trend back in the day. It sounds crazy now because everyone does it, which is really cool. But back then, that's what got me to break through. That's what got me to episode 87, where Raj Rajaratnam asked to come in. Because when YouTube launched Shorts, I had blown up on TikTok in 2021.
Raj ended up in prison? Do I remember that correctly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
With the other Indian guy, you know what I called it? I referred to it as a xenophobic fist bump. The only guy they arrested was a foreigner.
Yeah, he didn't like
And the
that.
Chinese bankers. They got a couple of
Yeah.
Chinese bankers too.
Yeah, but he came on because his guys, my shorts were everywhere. When YouTube launched shorts, they were really pushing it because at the time, if you remember, they actually got surpassed by TikTok in daily average user time for like a month, which was terrifying to them. Obviously, that's long since changed and they got that back. But part of it was they went overdrive into shorts and they couldn't get any podcasts to make shorts. And so I was making the shorts. They were doing 130% average watch time. I'd be watching them do 10 million on TikTok, and I'd be looking at YouTube with 130% average watch time, and it's doing like 3,000 during the fall 2021. And I'm like, guys, you got to send this. And then it was like a button got hit right after Thanksgiving. And everything I mean, it was like every single clip I would put out. And again, I'm spending ridiculous time on them. They would average 4 million views. And I just owned the feed for a few months. And then I took
And then along comes Sophie Cunningham.
Along comes Sophie Cunningham. That was years later. But
I know, but she's wiped out my YouTube feed.
Oh my God, yeah, she's everywhere. But she on Twitter, all of it.
Oh,
but like
God.
I then took the slowly throughout 2022. I continued that trend, and then by the summer of 2022, towards the end of the summer, I was like, I'm gonna start taking time away from shorts because now people are on the real show, like big time.
Right.
And I'm going to take that and I'm going to start to edit the fronts of the shows to get more retention. So I would spend, you can go look at my 145 Michio Kaku edit and stuff like that. Like there was ridiculous time that would go into these edits. And part of it's because I'm OCD and I would just get every fucking frame right.
Michio Kaku's that physicist? That physicist?
That's right.
Okay.
But like I was doing that from episode 113 on. And then, like some shorts when I could. And then I got away from shorts completely, started building the other channels. And it just kind of kept creeping up like this.
When did you start hiring?
So my guy,
what's the phrase? Deef the queef. When did Deef show up?
Nah, Deef was on my show.
Did I just hear Deef? Is he in there somewhere?
No, he's not in here. He was on episode.
He's funnier than fuck too.
He's so fucking funny. He was on episode 103 and 132, and he and I had great chemistry, and we became really good friends. And he wasn't the first guy with me though. The first guy with me who to this day is my right-hand man running the thing is Alessi Alaman. So this was a kid. Funny story. December 2020. I've been working like crazy. So late one night, I just get like a little ripped. And I see a Lex Friedman post on Instagram. And for some reason, this comment stood out where it said, "Hey Lex, can you share all your equipment with us? We'd love to know." And it was some fucking podcast behind it was called the Social League. And I'm like, well, Lex is never going to answer that. I know all his equipment though. So it's just like ripped enough. I send the guy text, "Do you want to know his equipment?" Yes. So I sent him pictures of everything and what everything is. He's like, "Wow, thanks. Here's a courtesy follow." Turns out it's this kid Alessi who was like 20 years old out in California running his own little Zoom podcast on the side. And he, unbeknownst to me, started listening to my podcast. This is when I had like 25 listeners. And he hits me up in March 2021, like 3 months later. And he's like, sends me a video. He's like, "Bro, you're the next Joe Rogan." And I remember like looking at the phone, going over to my mom, like, "Look at this idiot." And I play the video, but I'm like, "Oh, that's very nice of him." And so we connected. And then I would just talk with him for like a year and a half. And then I started this March 2020. August 2022, I flew him up to stay with us for a weekend at my parents' house. So by us, I mean me and my parents, literally. And taught him some basics of editing. And I said, "If you want, start a fan page." So he did. And throughout the fall would learn how to edit with that fan page. And he actually built like a little something from it. It was like pretty impressive by December, I'd say. And so then he moves up to Jersey, brings his girlfriend, moves up to Jersey on a whim in January 2023 without even checking with me, and slowly starts to work with me, comes full-time for free in April 2023. I didn't have any money.
Because he believed in you. He believed in you, Julian, huh?
He believed in me. And I'll never forget that. And so then I kept on raising it up. Like by May, it was $500 a month. By June, it was $1,000 a month to him. By July, it was $1,500. It was 3,000 by August. And then by the beginning, I moved to Hoboken in August. He was closer up to here. That's where he had moved. And so by January, I had him at like 6K a month, and we were rolling. And I was even paying him when we were losing money, because we went through a really difficult period from September.
That's what you do. That is what you're supposed to do.
What you do. Yeah. We went through
my dad was a contractor. And the one thing he did is he didn't lay off his employees when times got slow.
That's right. I've hired 5 people, including Christian the Venezuelan, since I started this, who like work with me full time, and no one's ever left. And I'm 5 for 5. These guys are amazing. And we just added our 5th like a month ago. First girl on the team, Amanda, to help organize all these fucking dudes.
Ungaro?
No, not that Amanda. But she's doing. Yeah, I hired her from Brazil.
Yeah. Something altogether different, right?
Yeah, but yeah. So Alessi was with me, and he started. He would just learn everything from me. He'd sit with me and see how I edit, because like I'm an editor by trade. And he absorbed a lot of it. And then he and I started building second channels and then third channels. And eventually he took them over. By the end of 2024, he was running those things mostly himself.
You're describing the life of an advisor of a grad student, by the way.
Probably.
By the way, one of the things I would sign into my group in a heartbeat is an athlete. Is an athlete.
They're organized.
They're organized. Their GPA's probably been stepped on because they were working out 4 hours, 5 hours a day. And on top of that, they understand the no pain, no gain. One of my most successful grad students ended up doing a TED Talk and shit, to give you an idea. He graduated high school with a 1.7 GPA, high school. But he was a 3-sport athlete, and he was a quarterback. He was a quarterback. And so here's a kid who knows how to take a fucking team of idiots and move the ball 90 yards down the field and score.
That's right. My best friends in college and some of my best friends to this day, we're all really tight. We're all D1 players at Bucknell. I was the one guy that wasn't on the football team. We just lied about it. I said I was a 4-string quarterback. But I watched them work 60 to 65 hour a week jobs and somehow go to class and get decent grades. And I always thought the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, this is like, these are the first round draft picks.
Yeah, I took any athlete. I did graduate admissions. I took any athlete who could bog me or otherwise.
Yeah. But Alessi got better and better, and he was doing the board here as well because he lived up here. And then what happened was he married young. The girl he moved up here with, he married in the first year. He had been dating her for a couple years, and he's a Cali kid, and he had been living down in Florida during college during COVID, and he wanted to be back in Florida. So March 2025, he's like, I really want to move to Florida in June. Like, I feel like we got this in a good spot, and I can run the content from down there. The difference is I won't be able to do the board anymore. And Joey Deef, who was a really good friend of mine and lives up here, very unexpected to me, said, oh, bro, I'll do that. I was like, what? He's like, oh, 100% I'll do that. I was like, you want to do that? You want to work with me? He's like, yeah. Now, Joey Deef's a genius. He's a creative genius. He writes scripts. He's an actor. He's a director. He's been a stand-up comedian, but like, he's out there.
I didn't know. I just learned everything I've ever known about Deef.
Oh, yeah.
Right there, just now. You just gave me the entire package right there.
Deef's a monster. And I'm like, Joe, first of all, I would totally do that. But, like, I don't want to take you away from all your creative work and stuff. He's like, are you fucking kidding me? This is the greatest setup ever. He's like, we do the job where I go in and fill this out. I help you however I can. And then, like, I get to be, it's like not a 9 to 5. It's like a random time kind of thing. And that's how creatives work. We like working on all different times of the day. So I was like, after about 2 months, I was like, wow, you're really serious? He's like, yeah. I was like, fuck it. Let's do it. Greatest thing I ever did. So between Alessi and him, like, total knockouts. And now, obviously, like, we always had amazing chemistry. So to have the weekend show that developed this year where it's me going and he's in here and he's on the mic too, like, it's kind of magic. But it developed that way. And then I told you I had gotten away from short form content because we were building in other ways, building out the mid form channel, the 1 hour channel. And I was always really particular about those edits. So I'd never focused on Instagram or anything like that. But I hired Danny Gonzalez, who's my boy, to come in here beginning of last November. And he and I began to build the Instagram together. I had 15,000 on there at the time. I'd never really posted anything on there. And so now that's at like 250,000 and we're making good content there, repurposing that. And I've just been investing in a lot of things this year. And here we are. But I will say this. I always knew there would be a day, even though I've been around for a long time, and even though I would argue,
not by my standards, dude.
Well, I'm
I'm an old man. I've been around for 50 years.
Not by your standards, but in my industry,
yeah,
I've been around a long time, and I would argue that pretty much everyone in the industry at least knew my face and knew who I was by the beginning of 2022 because I was the only guy on the YouTube. The YouTube Shorts feed when it came to podcast clips was me. People reposting Joe Rogan clips, some Theo Vaughn, and some people reposting Logan Paul clips. That was it. So, like, what happened is YouTube went to all these podcasters in March 2022 and said, this jerk off in New Jersey, who no one's ever heard of, is doing 4 million views a video. For the love of God, can you please start making shorts? Just do what he does. And in March, suddenly a bunch of big podcasts were making, like, at the same day, they all started making like shorts, kind of like I was, which was like the coolest thing ever. But like in my industry, I've been around. That said, I just always had it in my head because I had this delusional belief that this was going to work out. It was like the one thing in my life I didn't overthink. Thank God. And I just kept going. And when I was a year in to doing this full time in March 2021, and I had 25 listeners. It was a few weeks before I ended up going viral for the first time on TikTok. I was so tired. I had a lot of health problems the first 4 years too, so that wasn't helping. And I was sitting up one night and I said to myself, I said, someday they're going to say you came out of nowhere. And you're going to need proof that you didn't come out of nowhere. And so I started a thread on Twitter. And every Tuesday night / early Wednesday morning, with few exceptions, as far as like sometimes I did it on a Thursday morning, but I have never missed a week on this. Every week since then, I have put my sub count from my main channel and just replied to it. And you can go see that thread. It's fucking whatever it is, 300 tweets long, 350 tweets long at this point. And so if people ever want to know where I came from, you can literally see the progression right there. It started at 294 subscribers, and today the last one I did was at 1,355,000, and the next one will be somewhere in the 1,370 something thousand tomorrow night. So I think that was always a frustrating thing to a lot of people when they're like, damn, you're an overnight success or something like that. No. First of all, I'm not a success. I own a Honda. I don't own a home. I have a long way to go. But like the idea that you came out of nowhere, most people, unless it's like the Cash Me Outside girl, they don't see the years and years that goes into
How about that? Huh?
How about that? But that's my story. That's the truncated version, I guess. But.
How about that? How about that all the time?
Well, I want to, Julian,
was that all set up? Was that teed up? Did she orchestrate that?
I have no idea.
I suspect it, right?
I couldn't tell you the first thing about her. I just know
she made a fortune. She made a fortune.
Yeah, she did. I know that.
How about Julian, Cash Me on the outside?
Julian, I want to ask you. You said things got slow for a period of time. So things were taking off, and then what happened that things slowed down?
I had an issue at first, unbeknownst to me, in September 2023, where there were some problems with my YouTube channel. And that was, in hindsight, this was a really important thing that happened because it, I think everyone has to go through things where horrible shit happens that's totally out of their control so that you can learn how to deal with that. But, I had just gotten out of my parents' house. I had just moved to Hoboken. I was paying a lessee, and I didn't have much money that we had earned at that point. And there was a point there where I was losing about 5 figures a month.
Why?
Because the views went through the floor.
Why?
Because my discoverability went through the floor. Long story short, it was a technical thing, but there had been a few episodes that I actually don't, I don't want to say this publicly because I don't want to create any copycat situations, but there was something internally I was going to YouTube about it and the whole bit because I had it, I caught it, I knew exactly what it was. And then, getting inside YouTube is kind of like getting inside North Korea. Good luck. So that didn't work. And then it lightened up, and we came out as, no complaints to YouTube, because on the other side we ended up coming out just fine, and things started to kick up again. And then I was like, you know what? Sometimes shit happens, but yeah, it wasn't like.
So was it
just a time.
YouTube's fuck up? Was it YouTube's fuck up?
No, it was not.
It was not YouTube's fuck up.
It was not YouTube's fuck up. It was an algorithmic fuck up, but it wasn't. It wasn't caused by that. No, it wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. It was what it was, and like we dealt with it, and it was at a really hard time for me because my health was through the floor at that point. I hadn't started treatments yet. And
treatments for what?
I have something called eosinophilic asthma, which is just a fancy way of saying asthma that's induced by severe allergies to everything. And I had started to get a little sick shortly before I started the podcast, was seeing doctors in February and March, early March 2020. No one knew what it was because I was a high performance athlete at the time, and I was suddenly having some breathing problems. And then by June, I was in the emergency room, and I was down by 2023. I was down 45 pounds off of what I was. I was skin and bone. My skins was yellow. It was really nasty, but they figured out what it was in May 2021. So I knew I wasn't dying. And,
what triggers it?
What happened?
I'm going to write about healthcare this year. So
what happened was I was always allergic to a lot of things. I was one of these people that, like, when people would walk into the office and be like, man, the pollen's really getting to me, I'm like, that's not real. That's invented by the USSR. It's not a real thing. Like, stop. But I was wrong about that. I'll freely admit that. And so I just, your immune system shuts down, your gastric system shuts down, your body just stops working when it's exploded with all kinds of problems that it can't handle. And so when they figured it out in May 2021, what they realized is that, I was an only child. So when I was 4 years old, my mom and dad got me a golden retriever for Christmas. And she was my best friend growing up. She died summer after my senior year of high school. And it turns out I was extremely allergic to her. But when you're that young, your body is resilient and it learns to deal with it and you don't exhibit a ton of the systems. One thing I didn't know is that I just thought everyone was always a little stuffed up. I'd been stuffed up my entire life. But they're like, no, that's not the way it is. Is that always? I'm like, yes, it's always been the case. They're like, well, there you go. But I could deal with it. And then basically the way the doctors, once they figured it out, the way the doctors explained it is they're like, once she left your life, your body was like, okay, we're done. Stop that shit. And so I was still allergic to other things like grass, dust, shit like that. But my body had a good immune system. And so shortly before the pandemic, my mom got a golden retriever again. And I was coming home all the time on the weekends because, like, she was like my best friend. And that's when I started getting sick, and we didn't realize it. And the way they explained it is they said your body basically exploded. And it said, now I want none of this. I don't want dust. I don't want grass. I don't want anything. And it just started working against itself. So they said the only way.
A lot of allergies work that way, where your body gets teed up to be allergic. Like, we had a friend who was eating shrimp one night.
Yeah.
And she'd eaten shrimp her whole life. And she said, this is the spiciest shrimp, the spiciest sauce, drive me nuts. Everyone was saying, it's not that spicy. What are you talking about? The next morning, they finished the shrimp and she went down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I got vertigo 2 weeks ago, out of the blue, just out of the blue. Fucking blue. Now, I've been stuffy, and I'm hoping like hell it's contributing because I think I can figure out how to deal with the stuffiness. But I sat up out of bed, and the room was just spinning all over. I got up, I fell on the floor, and Jesus Christ, these kind of things when they show up out of left field. Now, my wife has problems that are so fucked up that I could spend 3 hours talking about just her problems. Well, I consider myself exceedingly lucky. And as I like to say to her, could be worse, could be me, right?
I always took good care of myself, and I trained really hard. I ate pretty well, like all that stuff. But you don't realize how important health is until something is taken from you.
Gone.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I definitely got that. But when they told me in May 2021, they said there's one way to fix this. It's not guaranteed, but it is pretty high hit rate. You have to do custom immunotherapy shots. You have to do it every week for at least a year, and then you have to continue to do it after that, and you can never miss a week. And I looked at the doctor. I was living back in the woods with my parents, and I'm like, guys, I don't own my own car. I do have access to my mom's if I need it, but like I work 24/7 from the time, like literally from the time I wake up. I'm going to miss a week if I do this. I said, do you think I can manage the symptoms and not die? You know, not to be dramatic, but like not be on the floor. And then when I make enough money and get far enough in my business to make it up to North Jersey and have my own place, commit to going to a doctor's office. I said, well, you can manage it. It's going to suck, but like, yeah, you're not going to die. You're fine. I said, okay. So I did that, and at least I knew what it was. But I'm telling you, like, when we got to like May 2023, I remember getting on the phone with Alessi, and I said, listen, dude, I knew I was going to be moving to North Jersey in the next few months. We were finally at that point. And I said, this is going to get really bad for like the next 8 months. Like I can feel it. My body is at its last, it's in the last round. It's bloodied up. I am really short with my temper, which is not like me. I am not fun to be around. I'm like, and unless he's the sweetest kid ever, like he's the kind of guy you could kick in the shins and he'd smile and ask how you're doing. And I'm like, I just need you to bear with me until next spring because I'm like, I'm going to get up there. They're going to cook these serums for me. I'm going to start the shots in November. It won't work for the first 3-4 months. That's what they said. And then it'll start slowly working. I'm like, just bear with me till next spring. And credit to him, he did, because I got to North Jersey. When I got to Hoboken, I had some days where I was running out of this place because I couldn't breathe. I mean, it was so bad. And then YouTube went south, and I was just, my whole body was wired with cortisol all the time. I looked awful. I was not fun to be around. And Alessi was so goddamn patient with me, which I will always, always appreciate, like him being thick and thin with me. And then I remember when we got to, I made myself change my schedule. That was the first thing. I went home for Christmas on December 23rd in 2023. I was banged up. Christmas Day, my parents live in South Jersey. My grandfather's place was an hour away. The whole family goes to his house on Christmas Day. I'm there at 2:00 until 8:00. And at 8:00, I got in the car that I drove there. I drove my dad's car there. My dad drove my mom's car there. And I drove home to their place because that was my life and that's what I did. I got home at 9:00. I was in front of my computer at 9:15 and I edited episode 178 with Matt Cox until 3:45 in the morning. And at 3:45 in the morning, I finish editing that episode. I look at the screen. I'm like, this can't go on like this. I've been doing 4 straight years of going to bed at 4 or 5 a.m., waking up at 10, dead for an hour, and then just working in front of a screen all day. My body's gone. My health is gone.
You have time to read books?
Almost never. And that's all
How
I
about
did.
audiobooks? How about audiobooks?
Never. No.
You're not in the car? You're not in the car ever?
I want to get into that.
I want to
no, Julian. I want to get into
No.
your research too. I'm glad you bring that up, Dave. But finish your thought on the health.
Yeah.
I do want to get into the research that you put into this.
Yeah. I at that point, like I always read everything and I listened to a lot of things before I did the podcast. And then I'm editing. You can't edit and listen to a podcast at the same time. You know what I mean? And I never had time to read stuff. I just went off years and years of having been able to read stuff. But I looked at the computer that night. I said, no more. I said, I knew I was driving back to Hoboken on the 27th. So I said, guess what's going to happen? I know I'm still dead. I'm a month into these shots. They haven't done shit yet. I feel awful, but I'm waking up at like 6:30 or whatever it was on the 28th, and I'm going to the gym. I basically haven't had a real workout now in 4 years, but I'm like, fuck it. I will just torture myself and get myself back in this habit. And I did for the first 2 months of 2024. It sucked. And then the shots started to have an effect. And I kind of like hit the ground running. And I was like, I said to Alessi, I said, first of all, thanks for getting through this period with me. I said, secondly, we were doing well while I was banged up. Wait till people see me fresh. They've never seen me fresh before. And it just, 2024 just kind of went like that and just kept, 2025 felt great. Like I was really training hard, like strength training hard at that point. And, I've been, knock on wood, feeling great since. I still go get my allergy shots every 4 weeks. It totally changed my life. And, that was, in all honesty, I know people say this and it's like very stereotypical. It's like, all right, come on. But like, I am grateful for all that process having happened. I wouldn't want to do it again. I wasn't thrilled that it did at the time, but like, you know, as far as I'm concerned, those are light struggles compared to what other people deal with, and it still taught me a lot.
As Emerson said, sort of, it made me who I am today.
Right.
So,
Michael, you wanted to ask about research?
Yeah, because when I listen to you, like you come across very well versed, very knowledgeable. So I'm just interested in what your research process is when you had Baron Coleman on, or any of your guests. Like, what is your process?
So I'm very lucky. I have a photographic memory, and I like to do things very live. I like things real. I like when the cameras go on, nothing changes. I'm me. And so I think I get way too much credit for research or knowing things. If people listen really closely, it's just communication. It's how I do what I do. A conversation to me is like a river. And when I hear things from people, they're giving me choices on estuaries we can go into. And sometimes they make the call and they go right into it, and then I roll with them on that. Or other times I make the call, and if the estuary is not good, we come out to the main river and we find a new one. And that's really all I do with people.
Great metaphor, actually. It's a great
metaphor. Explain that again. Explain that again, Julian.
Conversation's like a river. It starts off, I sit down and say, "How the fuck you doing?" And they laugh, whatever. We go there, and then I'm like, "You just doing this other thing. What is the deal with that, man?" And then they have the floor. And now I just do this thing. I have 2 ears, and I listen, and I just go towards the estuaries that, like, I don't know. I have a skill for hearing when someone, even if they don't tonally emphasize a word, but the way that their body moves when they're saying a sentence or how they throw something in, I'm like, ooh, there's something there. Okay, I'm going to hit that.
As in, like, right? He didn't say the whole story there.
Exactly. Not even just that. Sometimes that, but like a lot of times it's just like one little thing that, the detective notices when he gets to the scene, but the people who were running the crime scene, that's right, they didn't get. And that's what I do. But before a podcast, it was funny because the Baron Coleman one, he said to Amanda a couple days before, I said, you know what? I should prepare for this one. I should do that. And then I couldn't bring myself to do it because I'm like, I had prepared for, there was one podcast in particular I had really prepared for back in the day. And I won't say which one it was, but I may have said that before somewhere, but I'd like to stay away from saying which one it was. And I was awful because I knew all the answers before they said it. It had
lost spontaneity.
Lost spontaneity. They loved it because I knew their whole situation inside and out, but I thought the podcast was awful on my part. It was.
Let me tell you. Let me take you down an estuary for a second, and one in which there's a. So I studied Charlie Kirk from day one. Day one, something told me there's a story here. The guy gets his neck blown up right in broad daylight. Something's wrong. And I watched your Joseph Scott Morgan interview for about 20 minutes and quit. And I know this bothers you to no end, so it's going to finish well. But so what happened was I listened and it really repulsed me what I heard in the first 20. What I think happened was that Joseph didn't quite understand what he was walking into. And so he was a little loose with his language, a little casual with his storyline, not realizing that this is an important story and that he should be very, very methodical. And what I sense from you is that you felt very bad that you didn't help him capture the moment better. That's so then what happened is, so then I of course I've been watching Baron Coleman like crazy and Candace like crazy. And I also noticed in the comment section, right before I quit, I read the comments, and you were getting massacred. You're getting massacred in the comments. Fed slop, blah, blah, blah. So then I watched Baron Coleman, and then you teed up Coleman and Joseph Morgan. And Coleman had highest praise for Baron Coleman, for Joseph Morgan. And so I went and finished the
Not as
original.
bad as you thought, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. What happened was, and I think you helped him here. What happened was is he slowly but surely sort of got his rhythm, but it took 20 or 30 minutes. And now a related case like this, which I also stopped watching, and I think I was correct, was the douchebag on Joe Rogan last week, who was just TPUSA bullshit artist, best I can tell. And I did not want. I'm happy to hear the other view, but I don't want some guy lying to me. Right? That's what I don't want.
I think these situations get really toxic because both sides assume they're 100% right, and then it turns into name calling and all that. I hate that shit. All these like influencer wars and shit like that. I don't even.
But I don't want some guy paid to go on and lie to me. I don't want some guy paid to go on.
That's the thing. I think most of these people actually aren't paid. There are some who are, to be very clear. It's clear. But most of these people, they just get so caught up in the, I gotta be right. I gotta be right.
I understand
that they let it attack it. And so with the Joseph one, let me come back to that in a sec so I can answer Michael's question.
That was a big event last week. Big event last week.
And then I'll tie it all together. But when it comes to like what I do, Michael, to prep, I do all different topics on my show. One day I'll have one guy who's doing this fucking thing, another guy who's doing something entirely different. So I like to just have my brain in like the headspace to be ready to conversate. And so usually at about, I'd say now it's about 10. When I film usually at 12:30, at 10:30, I'll go make a Google Doc. And I have my production list of like 22 things, like check the mic level, check that light 5 is on, check that this is closed out there, all that shit. So I copy and paste that in every time. And then I've used this example before, but let's say we have my friend Joby Warwick coming in. He's coming in again in a few weeks. Joby Warwick covers national security. I'm like, okay, Joby, Syria, ISIS book. I just start typing in these terms like a bullet. Syria, ISIS book, Hezbollah, Houthis, Israeli border. I'm thinking of things that like I know he's done. I'm not allowed to say that one out loud yet, but the thing that his book is on, and I'll do 11 of those things, and my memory will lock those themes in my head. And it's in size 11 purposely so that like on my screen there on the production list, I can't really see it. And I just kind of have those themes there so that if there comes a moment in a conversation, a lot of times this doesn't happen with people ever. But if there comes a moment where there's a little bit of dead space and I don't know where they want to take it or I haven't thought about where to take it, I might be like, oh, Syria. And I have maps in my head and timelines and stuff. And so I have that locked from earlier. That's all the research that goes into it. The rest is just like what I read on a daily basis on the internet and stuff. One of the parts that I've had little spurts have been able to work on is like getting back to full reading like I love to do. It's very hard to find time to do that other than late at night and you fall asleep with the Kindle on your face because you just worked all day. But a lot of it is just retention and life experience and talking with people way smarter than me on certain issues and like knowing how to phrase that in a way that gets the other person going, like you're throwing a line and they just bite. But that's really what it is. And so like with Barron, I was texting with him because he's like, man, he was so prepared. He knew exactly what I wanted to ask. And I sent him the Google Doc after the live. I said, listen, I appreciate all the praise. Don't give me too much praise on that one. These were the notes. And it was like 12 words. It said like Charlie Kirk shot, September 10th. It just like very random shit. He's like, wow, that's what it was.
So Barron brilliantly deposed Morgan.
Brilliant. Yeah. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to that. So with Joseph Scott Morgan, I couldn't agree more with how the podcast progressed. Here was my issue there. And this is where I was really upset. Usually people just call me Hitler in the comments, and that's fine. If they're not doing it to the guest, I'm protective of my guests. Like, keep it on me. This was like one time where they weren't doing that. They were pretty much going at him, and they should have been going at me. And I'll tell you why. First of all, Joseph Scott Morgan has the worst luck ever with Newark Airport that I have ever seen. I never have a problem with other guests. I
always have a problem in Newark.
Always. Oh, dude. I fly people into there all the time. We never have an issue. Always. And when Joseph comes here, there's a problem. So he got diverted to Connecticut in the air the day before. So he's filming with Jesse Weber in New York City until 2 in the morning. He comes here in the morning on like light sleep. And he's the man. He's been on my show a bunch, but like he was like a little tired. So like a little shorter with the fuse than normal. He's usually like the most laid back, guy ever. And we thought he's always working on 100 cases at once. So my thought is always like, if there's a soup du jour of the moment, we'll hit it. But like, we're going to talk about a million things here. So I knew we'd talk about Charlie Kirk, which I'm not an expert on at all. And I was thinking we were going to talk about a lot of other stuff. So right before camera, we were just talking about it. So like Deef turned the cameras on. I'm like, let's just roll right into that. Turned into the whole podcast.
Exactly.
And there were a few things that do frustrate him with how some of the online experts talk about the case from a forensics perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like, you know how it is, Dave, when you're in chemistry, like when you've looked at shit your entire life and then someone who's maybe never actually looked at it, like says something so basically wrong, you're just like, what the fuck are you even doing? And so there were
never seen that before.
I know what you're talking about with him, and there were a couple spots there early on where he was just so frustrated with something that it turned people off. And the reason I felt bad is because, first of all, the podcast wasn't even supposed to be about this, and then it was. And secondly, like I felt like I hung him out to dry a couple times there and put him in the positions to do that, and that's my fault. That should never happen. So I was like, after that podcast, because he's also a really good friend of mine and just one of the best guys ever, he was in my parents' house back in episode 146. I mean, he's an OG with me.
But the last 2/3 were good. You did retrieve it.
You
had to get through the first third. Yeah, that's right. You had to get through the first third.
If I fuck it up in the first hour, it's done. Doesn't matter. Right. It's done. And
so we should just go home now then.
That's right. That's right. But
now we're getting into the goods. We're getting into deeper stuff.
3 weeks before, Alessi hit me up and said, "Hey, we got to get Baron Coleman in." I'm like, "Oh, I've seen this guy. Yeah, I see his clips on my feed. He's the guy covering the Kirk case." He's like, "Yeah." I say, "You know what? I'm having Joseph in a few weeks. I'm sure we'll hit that case a little bit. I haven't covered it heavily." I'm like, "Let's talk to this guy in September and bring him in September or October." He's like, "All right, that sounds great." So then this podcast comes out. I call up Alessi, and I'm like, "I want to call this guy now."
How do you reach Coleman? I would not know how to get to his number.
Clint Russell. Clint Russell got me.
Oh, I know Clint.
I knew people who knew him. And so I went on a full court press. I said, Alessi,
it's a network effect. It's a network effect.
I said, Alessi, I have a vision in my head right now. I'm going to fix this. I'm gonna fix this. I know this will go well. And so I had never met Baron before. I'm like, I need to meet him first. But I'm like, if this goes well, I'm going to have him on and I'm going to see if I can get him here for 2 days. And I'm going to fly Joseph in. And the two of them, Baron's an expert on the fucking case. If there's flies on him about this thing, they're paying penthouse rent. Let's have him in there. He's a litigator. Joseph is a forensics investigator. It's none of the circumstantial stuff. It's strictly the investigation.
Baron's also a sweetheart.
Yeah, no, he's the greatest guy ever. So I get on the phone with Baron for 90 minutes. We hit it off. And I said, well, Baron, of course I want to have you on the podcast. He's like, I'd love to. Great. I said, I also have an idea. I said, I'd love to have you the second day still here and bring in Joseph Scott Morgan because you know everything about this case. I'm a generalist. I am the farthest thing from an expert. This is a really controversial topic, and I should not be the one to sit there and question every part of the investigation with the forensics expert. I'm like, I can be there and facilitate this whole thing. I think it would be amazing, though, if you had a chance to ask every open-ended question we have in whatever process you want. And Baron was like, all right, I'm open to that. I want to make sure we have a podcast there, though. Would it be cool if we all got on a Zoom next week? I said, fuck yeah. Called up Joseph. He's like, hell yeah. So I get him on a Zoom for an hour, and I just let the two of them go. And I was like,
you could see it work. Yeah.
Oh, I could see. I'm like, oh, yeah, we got this. And then Baron was like, fuck yeah, I want to do this. And Joseph was like, fuck yeah, I want to do this. So then I did the first day with Baron. We got along really well, had a great podcast. The next day, Joseph got in. And when Baron got here, when Baron also had his security guy, Steve, here for the weekend as well. It was really cool. They got here. They all started talking on the couch out there. And so I
Quick
came in.
ask, Jory, does everybody have security now?
I mean, that was, I think I've only ever dealt with one person with security.
Okay.
This was
That
like the
answers it.
second time.
Go
I'm
for
like,
it.
this is, my bedroom's right there. Like,
I know.
I'm
Shoot
the
me now.
farthest thing.
Right.
I'm like, I'm
Shoot
the
me now.
farthest thing. Sorry, Steve. Nicest guy. Steve was awesome. But they started talking on the couch out there. Barron's from Alabama. Joseph also spent most of his life in Alabama. They're kind of yucking it up. I'm like,
Couple of
yeah.
bubbas.
So I came in the studio. I said to Deef, I'm like, I'm just gonna let that happen for like 20 minutes. So they talked. Then I go out there. I'm like, all right, guys, you ready? We rolled in, and my only plan was, I was like, all right, let's just start with the shot. Let's just start with the shot, and these guys will take it wherever they want in the investigation. And I'll tell you, man, they killed it. I mean, they were both stupendous for 4 hours and 15 minutes. There was a point when we were crossing the 2 hour mark. There was a point where Barron was really locked in on a bunch of back and forth points with Joseph, and Joseph would be like, yeah, and this.
Time was a huge variable.
Time was a huge variable. And there was a point where I was like looking at Deef, like to the left, and it was like a shortstop and a second baseman in the dugout after the 6th inning when the pitcher's got a perfect game, and you're just like, don't say anything, but let's not fuck this up. just I don't know. So we stopped for a bathroom break just after 3 hours, and I went out to Steve and I said, Steve, I didn't get your flight till pretty late tonight. I have no idea. Like, usually I know about 40 minutes into a podcast whether this is going to be a 2 hour 45-minute podcast, a 3 hour and 5 minute podcast, a 3 hour 15-minute podcast, or fuck, we're going to be here for 6 hours. At 3 hours, I'm like, they could go another 3. They could go only a half hour, maybe another hour. I don't know. But I said to Steve, I'm like, do they have a few hours? Like if they go there, he's like, oh, fuck yeah, dude. We're
Is
good.
there any chance that we'll get into it, I think, but is there any chance that the defense isn't going to be in absolutely direct contact with one, if not both of these guys? Because I would have both on payroll already if it were me.
That's the thing. And I didn't, this was another thing that the shortstop and second baseman were not saying during the podcast. But when we were both looking at each other, we both, and Deef and I talked afterwards, we both had the understanding that we were watching something that A, may very well make it to the courtroom.
Right.
And B, the dude sitting in front of us in particularly being guided by Barron with all the right questions. If I'm the defense, first of all, Joe Scott Morgan is like the guy in that space. That's
right.
Number one. Number
two. Is that
two,
true? If you were to name the corner types, he would be. By the way, for the record, I used to do autopsies for a summer job. I used to assist autopsies for a summer job. Yeah. I used to love rooting around the corpses.
Good for you. But if I were the defense, Joseph and I went to dinner afterwards. Those guys flew out, and he and I went to dinner. I said, Joseph, that shit may get played in court. Number one, like all the montage cuts of him going, that would be below the standard. Hell yes, shit like that. I said, number two, maybe you being a public figure for so long could be used against you so that you don't have to get the call. But even with that, you might get a call here.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll see. But yeah, we were watching it, and I knew they were pitching a perfect game. And then at that 3 hour mark, when I asked Steve that, I didn't know whether it was going to be another half hour, another 3 hours. Turned out to be another hour, 15 minutes or so. But you saw it in the podcast when I said to Barron right at the end, I'm like, Barron, am I missing? Are we missing?
I was up till 3:30 in the morning watching that podcast.
I love to hear that. Thank you for the watch time. But he looked at me and he was like, I think we got it. Like, and when we wrapped, I was just like,
so I think you have to be a Baron Coleman fan club guy to understand why Barron spent so much time adding up all the minutes. Because
I know exactly why.
No, I know why.
But
they didn't. But it wasn't clear in the podcast that it had to do with does it make sense that the body could be, dealt with as quickly as they claim it was?
I'll put it this way. Because what's crazy is this all started.
Because if you listen to Coleman, that's a big part of the story is how did they process the body so quickly?
Which is a reasonable question. And I think Joseph
Absolutely.
cleared up some of that for sure. And there's other parts that's like, that's interesting. I'll get to that in a second. But like I said this on the podcast. I said it in the first podcast with Joseph. I called Joseph Scott Morgan like 3-4 days after Charlie Kirk was killed when I put the timeline together in my head. And I was like, how was his body flown to Arizona that quickly and bombed? That it was just wild to me. And he laid it out for me how it could have happened if it went right. And he emphasized, he's like, here's all the things that would need to happen. He's like, it's not impossible though. And I think he was able to lay that out. That said, I've had a chance to talk with Barron.
But they might be, wait a minute, but they might be able to show that it got there even faster and therefore there's something wrong.
Maybe. Sure. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I've had a chance to talk with Barron off record, and obviously all that's going to stay off record. What I will say is that in the course of this entire case, from the time Charlie is shot until his body is back in Arizona, there are a million things that happen there. And I know for a fact that Barron Coleman has information on some steps of that process, such that if people decide to come out and, I don't know, obfuscate the truth or straight up lie or claim that something's not going to matter when you and I know for a basic investigation it will, this guy will, if he so chooses, will be able to bring the goods and
absolutely
and shut that down for sure.
Here's the other thing is the two people who've been spewing about this are Candace Owens and Barron Coleman.
Right.
What
Dave,
I will tell
Dave, I'm listening. I'm going to hit my light over here. Just keep talking.
No
I'm
problem.
listening.
What people who are drawing the wrong conclusions about what's going on are the ones who are watching clips rather than watching the entire incredibly lengthy dissertations put on by these two characters. And so if you see a clip of Candace Owens, you're not getting the story at all. You are getting misinformation the whole way. And same with Barron Coleman. They'll just show him being a clown, which he loves to do. And you have to literally wade through each of their podcasts. Now, when Candace says, Covet is lying, right? She shows him say something by a clip, and then she says he's lying, and then she shows him say the opposite by a clip. She lays out, she brings the receipts. You know where the term receipts comes from, by the way? Whitney Houston. It drove me nuts. Yeah, she used the term receipts and back about 30, 40 years ago or something. Yeah.
Jersey woman.
There, and since you photographic, that'll stick. I think what got Morgan in trouble in the first podcast was that he went and made statements that were not forensic and turned out to have been not well informed. And that's what got him in trouble for the first, sort of hour.
What statements?
Well, I can't give you specific ones. The type of thing like, the footage of Tyler, where anyone who's been watching this goes, there's no fucking footage of Tyler Robinson that I believe, right? So he made non-forensic statements, presuming that they're not bullshit. Now, here's the thing.
Again, this is exactly what I mean. Because
right.
Some of these things went right over my head because I don't fucking know.
Right.
So that's exactly what I mean, to where it then makes him look bad when people have to the guy's looking at 100 cases at a time.
I know.
He's not going to remember every single
I'm not blaming
specific.
him. I thought he did a great job, actually. The other question I have, and I'm going to tell you a story here, brief story, estuary story. I had a chance to sit down with Jonathan Turley this summer, and it was an extraordinary experience. He gave a talk, and then I asked him a couple of questions. One is, I said, are you near the Supreme Court? He said, no, I'm getting older, and the appointments are getting younger. In the middle of the Q&A, I had read everything he wrote about George Floyd, everything. And I wrote about it. And it was very hard to write about without getting in trouble, because you say, hey, George Floyd's a shit, or Chauvin did, you can get in trouble real fast, right? But I did. I wrote probably 30 or 40 pages on that. And in the middle of this, at the end of this Q&A, I said to him, did Derek Chauvin get a fair trial? And I watched Turley sort of recoil back And Turley's like the most prominent legal scholar, Supreme Court scholar. And he sort of recalled back and sort of stammered a little. He says, I have real problems with his trial. Now, the issue that's not been addressed by anyone that I have heard is, I'm not convinced we're going to see a legitimate trial. We might see a trial, but Chauvin's trial was not legitimate. Chauvin's trial was rigged from head to toe to convict the guy.
It's very, very difficult, in my opinion, to get in the internet mass-connected world to get a fully fair trial on anything in any direction that is litigated heavily in the public sphere. This Kirk case is no different.
Very hard.
I think it's a really, really difficult thing.
But, for example, in the Floyd trial, there was all sorts of footage showing Floyd couldn't breathe. Well before Chauvin put his knee on his back, the judge would not let it in the court. That's how you ruin a trial. I don't think there's a single guy in the Floyd trial who wanted to be the guy who the news said, this was the testimony that got him acquitted, because then that person would die.
I don't know why the judge wouldn't let that in the courtroom.
I don't either.
I don't know. Like, maybe I'm fucked up here, but that
seems relevant, doesn't it?
Yeah, wouldn't that make Chauvin more guilty? Wouldn't that help the case
to
make him guilty? Because he put the guy. Hold on, the guy's having trouble breathing, and then he sits on him. That seems like.
Turns out, if you look at where his knee was, it was not in a place that would restrict the flow. There's minutes upon minutes upon minutes of footage of them trying to help Floyd in civil terms, and he said, I can't breathe, I'm claustrophobic, blah, blah, blah. They literally got him out and put him on the ground. It turns out that according to Turley, if someone had testified that what Chauvin did was standard operating procedure, boom, he's acquitted. It's that simple. And they would not let that in the court.
Oh, that's interesting.
So here's the question now, what you want to be watching for, because this is going to be interesting for all of us who are watching, is does it appear as though the trial was legit? Now, and a lot has to do with what the judge lets in and out of the trial.
Right.
And if this is a pre-written script, now what you and I both know is if it wasn't Tyler, the plot is very, very complicated.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, I listen, I don't know what happened here. I don't know all of the involvement of who was involved and what it was. I know there's a lot of possibilities. What I am very comfortable with is that I don't really see a scenario here anymore that is easily argued, I should say, that Tyler Robinson acted alone and killed Charlie Kirk. I agree. That does not add up to me. I am open-minded on everything. I am open-minded to him having killed him. I will say that video that we saw on the rooftop that was released by Candace, whatever that was, a week and a half ago, dude don't have a limp, and I don't see a 42-inch gun.
Right.
Like, that's just what my eyes see. Now, if some fucking blob expert can come in there and show me exactly pixel by pixel where it is and that I'm just not seeing it, okay.
Well, the suspicious thing also, show me a security camera, which is everything we're shown, right? Him walking up and down the stairs. They're all security cameras. They're flock cameras. I know. You love flock cameers, I'm told.
I fucking hate flock cameras.
I know you do.
Don't put that on me, Ricky Bobby.
Ring in your chime there. Ring in your chime there, Elliot Page. Yeah, I listen to your flock camera rant too.
Yeah.
But show me a security camera that can't even read a license plate.
That's right.
Show me a security camera that has a frame every 5 seconds. My iPhone with mayonnaise on the lens would take a better video.
Yeah.
Than the ones we're seeing. So there's
I find that a lot of security camera systems in places, though, unfortunately, in a world where we've had Ring forever now, where people's security cameras in their own phone or in their own home are like almost HD, a lot of places still use old school bullshit.
These guys supposedly
terrible.
Put theirs in 2021. It's not a bad time to be putting one in.
then there's no excuse other
That's
than they
right.
wanted to cut a corner on the simplest thing that saved them fucking $10. Congratulations. Look what you got now.
And then I watched multiple sources saying that the screwdriver was found in the woods. For 3 days, the screwdriver was in the woods, and then it appears on the roof all of a sudden. The governor of Utah said they found the screwdriver in the woods with the gun.
The case
is nuts.
It's a mess. It's been a mess since day one. It has been the figurative example of Kash Patel's eyes. One direction and another direction, and you don't know where anyone's looking. It's
and
just,
giving the microphone
it's insane.
to Erica Kirk, which by the way, speaking of inauthentic people, have you ever seen anyone less authentic than Erica Kirk?
Let me chime in on that, because I want to add to that with Erica Kirk. First of all, the photo in front of the casket.
Well, we thought we left, Mike.
No, I'm here. I'm still here. I'm here. This is not a cardboard cutout of me. I'm still here.
That's right.
The photo in front of the casket after whatever that was, 3 days.
Yeah. No, 2 days. Well, she put it out 3 days later, but no, she put it out 2 days later. 2 or 3 days later. It was a day later when they took it. Yeah.
And then the wrestling, the WWE wrestling funeral that was at Cardinal Stadium. I live in Phoenix, so like at the Cardinal Stadium, that was 10 days after, with the fireworks and the whole spectrum of that. She's just not, Dave. She's just not likable in the public eye.
She's more than not likable.
But to general people, not everybody watches it. Not everybody watches it. I know, but not everybody watches it like that. Just watching her do those two things, she's just not likable.
There's a reason that the video that Drewski did was like his most popular one ever. People from all ends of the spectrum saw that and said,
"You mean the satire one?"
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone
was that
looked
the
at
heavy
that.
set blonde guy? Was that that was so funny. That was so funny.
I mean, somehow he made. Yeah, I won't go there. But
so when she, by the way, she's never shed a tear.
No,
she's not
I've
shed a tear.
I've never seen her ugly cry.
And when the kind of like if you're sitting there at your husband's funeral, we're going to be watching the person battling with every inch of their being, every ounce of their being, to keep their shit together. Mm-hmm. You're going to see it. You're going to see facial tension. You're going to see everything. When she wiped the tears from her eyes, someone actually counted 8 times she wiped the tears from her eyes. 8 times were on the left side. All 8 times were on the left side.
Well,
so apparently only her left eyeball was tearing up.
Yeah. Whenever you see someone, by the way, covering their mouth like this and their nose, those are expressive areas. You will see people in acting do that when they can't get themselves all the way there and they have to get the take, right? They'll cover this so that they can make the appearance that they're crying, because you cannot. It's very difficult to fake it. Forget just the eyes. It's very difficult to fake it in here.
The guys who know face muscles, I've read Blink years ago, and
you're really down it. Yeah.
And they talk about the facial muscles and shit like that. And there's one that came out last week that might have been out there for a long time. When she's at the casket, this is something you want to check into. When she's at the casket and she's putting her hands on Charlie's hands, her hands are bigger than his.
Yeah, that one I saw. I haven't looked into that yet either. I don't know. That would be a question actually for like a funeral director. I don't know what happens when
the bones don't change.
Body.
The bones
don't change, but like the muscular structure, the way that the video is taken, I'll put it this way.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I'll tell you that much.
I'm not going to say that. I'm just watching what I say here. What I will say is I'm less concerned with stuff like that. I'm much more concerned with the stuff I can see that can't be changed by a camera angle and all that. And I do know that was the fakest fucking video of all time as far as like her having any real emotion.
Did you see
off the microphone?
It's insane.
Did you see the video?
Insane.
Did you see the
By the
video?
Way, the other thing, the car, I noticed this right away. There's no blood in the car. I one time walked out of the 3rd floor elevators when a kid had taken a shot in the eye from a shard of glass in our building. Mm-hmm. And it looked like the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Just getting him on a gurney into the ambulance through the elevator. There was just blood all over the goddamn place. The car, you would not, if you just took a quick glance, you would not know there was blood in the car.
Maybe. I haven't really done that.
Now, if his spinal cord is gone, it wouldn't be pumping. So that one I can get around.
What about the video? I don't know if you saw this, Julian, the video of her driving with her little infant child driving by the Turning Point headquarters with the Coldplay song.
Kirk. She's calling her father Charlie Kirk.
I just knew that one right away. I knew that. And I told that story on the podcast with Barron. I've told that story before. You know, you felt guilty saying it out loud, but your gut knows. Your gut knows when I've never had that thought before. I'm sure it's happened before where there's some sort of faker in public, you know, in a major event who's like a total fraud. I've never had that impure thought that way immediately, where I was just like, oh, hell no. I'm like, because I knew nothing about this chick. I didn't know a goddamn thing about her until she walked out that night on Friday night. I don't follow Turning Point USA. I find political organizations to be gay. And I don't, it's not my world. Like I wasn't sitting listening to the Charlie Kirk show ever once in my life. Like, no disrespect. But, you know, then you see this whole thing and it's just like, what the fuck is
Immediately.
Yeah. Well,
and then you dig into her background. I've dug into satanic cults and all that shit. And her background has got horror story written all over it. I don't know if you've dug deep into that. Her whole family, all the military guys, they go back to Romania. They go back the whole.
I don't even know if I want to. I've heard some of it. My eyes have seen enough. I don't need to know more. I mean,
Julian, you and I are on the same page. You and I are on the same page with this.
She could be dancing with Charles Manson in '69 as like, you know, a time traveler, and like it wouldn't affect my opinion anymore. It's already destroyed.
In Laurel Canyon.
That's funny. Let me catch my breath. I'm laughing so hard. People listening on the audio. When that wrapped up, you had asked Barron two things. Barron said, which I thought was really interesting. One, why wouldn't Turning Point know this backlash by doing what they did? Yeah. By putting her on the front, like why would they fumble it that badly where she could have just went away, which I didn't think about until he said it. And the other thing is, you know, now that these shows have wrapped up and they're out there, are you worried at all about yourself?
Oh, don't do that.
No.
Listen. No, I say that as a joke. You know, man, if they came after me, that'd be some real low fucking hanging fruit. Like they've really, they have
people to shoot before they get to you.
Yeah. Like they have things have gone terribly wrong for them. Like they're like, wow. You know, we were playing in the major leagues, and now we can't even get on a little league field. We're gonna go, you know, fucking do something to this kid.
Shoot a guy in New Jersey, right?
Yeah, it's like this is very unserious. My bedroom is right behind this wall. Like
the risk is the guys who have material that they don't want to come out yet.
Yeah,
those are the guys who are at risk.
I can confirm I possess none of that. So
that's right, and I'm not suicidal either. Right?
Yeah, and I love life. I'm personally, I don't go to high places, and I don't experiment with belts at all. The only guns I use are on ranges, you know. And so I'm feeling really, and as I told you, my health is now really, really fucking good. You know, a few years ago, maybe I wouldn't have been able to say that out loud, but now, like, we're rolling. So
I meant that more not to somebody like take you out, but just the visceral or threats.
I've had that forever. I mean, I've over the smallest bullshit things, like over the years, I just never, like, well, you know, if someone actually did something. Guess that's how it goes. I don't
know. Someone stole my question. I cannot get myself to believe Kiriakou. And when Zach Faust, he led with it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not that I don't like what he says, right? Everything makes sense. I've got a little tiny voice in my head And as you said, I'll boost the money. I mean, he's still on payroll, right? He's on someone else's payroll, right? He's on, TRW's payroll or something like that. But Kiriaku's interesting because they say, well, he did his time. He's a real rebel. He's this and that. But if you actually look at, for example, the Watergate burglars and Deep Throat and the guys in Woodward, now, all these guys were all deep staters. And some of those guys did jail time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was to take down Nixon.
Listen, I'm going to repeat what I said to Zach.
I know. I'm not even asking for it. But...
And again, it'd break my heart if I were wrong. And I'm really good friends with John. Sweetest guy ever. I actually, when I was at dinner with Joseph afterwards, we were throwing some back, and he was talking about what a huge fan his wife is of John. So I just quickly got John on FaceTime, and John's like, I know you, Joseph, which was like really funny.
Right.
But,
you have good voices. You, by the way, are pretty good at that shit.
Thank you. But he if people knew what happened behind the scenes beyond what we know publicly about what they did to him.
Okay.
Like I said.
Okay.
If he were still in, it would break my heart. I would almost have to respect it because the commitment to the bit is beyond anything I've ever personally witnessed in espionage. It would just, that would shock me. Now, by the way, does that mean that John's infallible? No.
No, that's not the question at all.
Yeah, John has bones to pick, and sometimes, I've talked with him about this before, sometimes he'll go a little far with stuff strictly because he's really pissed off at someone, and he'll write a check once in a while that his ass can't quite cash. But when it comes to like the world and how a lot of things work and where it is at a 30,000-foot view, he's pretty on it, in my opinion, at least.
One thing you guys mentioned in the story, which I think is profoundly important.
Profoundly
important. And I think it got mentioned, but it didn't get obsessed over, which I would have obsessed over. It was the fact that the Rode microphone, what's relevant about it is, first of all, I don't buy the Rode microphone model. There's certain physics problems I have with it. I understand why Candace likes the model. And I think she's trying to get it right. But one of the problems I can't understand is how you can have a mic over here and a bullet hole over here. It really just doesn't look like it could line up. I like Barron's model that we have no idea what kind of tech they used to get them. I like better.
Barron, what did Barron's like? I'm not an exploding microphone guy. He said, I'm just not Tyler Robinson now, shot him with a 30-06 guy.
What's critical is that Rode microphone would have kept recording. And that's really, really important recording. I would love to hear the dialogue going on while they're... Now, other things, troubling things, the things that like tipped me off right away as soon as they showed up. When Charlie gets shot, Mikey McCoy, who supposedly is his right-hand man, the brains of the operation, who I think has an IQ of about 80. I don't think he's a particularly bright kid. He... without even looking at what happened to Charlie, turns around and walks away. Something like that bothers me to, forget about all the hat tips and the arm pats and stuff like that. But Mikey McCoy wasn't even in a position to see Charlie. And he doesn't even run around and look and go, holy fuck, and then run away. He just turns. And as Candace pointed out, it was 832 seconds, microseconds that he took to turn and walk away. And Charlie had not hit the deck when Mikey was out of view. That's a very strange response. And he just kept walking calmly. So I think the TPUSA guys, they look fishy from head to toe. But what's really critical, as Morgan pointed out, all the pieces of evidence and to auction off the microphone. I'm going, why didn't you sell his carcass? Why didn't you make jerky out of it? What the heck? And so the chair, I mean, I don't need to ask Morgan why you need to know where the chair was and the splatter and the.
That's why it helped having Barron so much, because Barron knew every microsecond like the back of his hand, and he could get so specific in ways that I never could.
That's right.
That just lets Joseph cook. I mean, I said to Joseph afterwards, I was like, that was the best college lecture you ever gave. You just did it on a podcast, like,
Right.
but he was put in a position to do it correctly. So I really, I can't emphasize enough how much I appreciate Barron coming in here and doing that and coming here for the weekend, knocking it out of the park, both episodes. Great guy. Really, really like Barron. Brilliant guy, by the way, too. Like, don't let that all shuck shit fool you. Like,
Oh no, it doesn't at all. It doesn't
I know it doesn't fool you. I'm saying to people out there who kind of hear him and he's just having a good time when he's first talking, you listen to that guy and then
he's good.
You get him cooking. He's Foreman grilling. I mean,
without telling
thing.
without telling us what he said, did you get anything from Barron that said this was critical information that really seals deals? I mean, did from that interview, we heard it, but did he in any way say to you, this part right here was a missing puzzle piece that fits over here and it's critical, but he didn't say it on camera?
I never had to have that conversation. There were points in that podcast where I knew there were things happening. I'm going to be very vague here, where I knew and he knew, based on our conversations off record, there were things happening that in the future could be very, very relevant. That's what I'll say.
Well, I'll tell you, if you had to bet a paycheck, which heaven only knows how big it is now, is this thing going to end up in trial? Or do you think there's going to be some way to circumvent a trial?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, it's been a weird case all the way to this point. I don't know why I could possibly predict something correctly. I do agree with you that no matter what direction you're looking, it's going to be really fucking hard to get any sort of unbiased jury in one way or the other.
Were you shocked by I'm not even worried about the bias of the jury because they're going to get 10,000 more pieces of information than they had from the press. Right? Mm-hmm. They're going to get inundated.
Right.
I don't think he'd ever plead it out. Ever. Because life in prison versus the death penalty, I'll roll the dice on that one, right? And the only way he'd plead it out is if there was something we don't know anything about, like someone said, look, by the way, you're going to off your family. The guys like, for example, that Zinn guy who jumped up and acted like a loon, who's a very fishy guy. He's a very suspicious guy.
They don't talk about that anymore.
They don't talk about that anymore.
All these years, all the times he was picked up, he never had CP, but now he does.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of interesting.
And so, where do I want to go with this? I'll let it go. I just think there's so many things wrong. And by the way, when they got it with child porn, yeah, CP, that's right. I was distracted while you were saying CP. You know who else got the CP? Stephen Paddock, Las Vegas shooter's brother, they found the CP. CP's the standard. Child porn is the standard. Am I not supposed to say that on YouTube? It's the standard, I believe, the standard way they get a family member to shut up. So, like, if Stephen Paddock's brother was screaming at the top of his lungs saying, he didn't do it, I can tell you why. And they go, oh, we just found CP on your computer. And he says, never mind.
I think you got a reasonable argument there.
One thing I want to ask Julian about, I'm switching gears
it's
here.
Trivial.
Because you finished up your last conversation, you didn't get to it in terms of the economics, the economy, Julian. And I'm curious, what's at the top of your mind right now? Maybe you're going to cover that this week, but
we're going to get to that on this weekend's episode because we have a lot outlined. This is not a new conversation. This is one I've talked about it a little bit before, but it's one like Deef and I talk about all the time behind the scenes, and it comes up with a lot of people, comes up with a lot of friends when I talk with them. But we've started to see a really loud public argument over the future of the economy and demographics, and particularly generational divides over the past couple weeks. And, I think it's time to be real about it. I'm a big proponent of the fourth turning and what those guys found in that book. And the fact of the matter is, I don't say this on an individual level. I say this on a collective level based on incentives and groupthink and standards and the slow passing of time. The boomer generation is the profit generation, which is always the generation that creates the ball rolling down the hill that turns into an avalanche that causes an enormous crisis, which is the period we sit in right now. And in doing so, there are some serious economic divides and there are serious economic policies that are coming home to roost in some cases. I say that in air quotes because some of them just keep somehow getting kicked down the curb, kicked down the road.
Amazingly.
Right. And, I'm a little, I will tell you this. Gen Z is the most interesting generation I think I've ever seen. And I'll tell you why. I'm a very back end millennial. I'm like right before Gen Z. I have much more of a Gen Z like pool though. I have much more in common with my friends who were born in 1996 to 1999 than I do with my friends born between 1989 and 1993. That has been that way for a long time. And some of my best friends would tell you that, I'm sure. But Gen Z, you have like the back 25% of the generation that, doesn't believe in gender and fucks furries and shit and is like uber soft and, doesn't have any real worldview or whatever. Then you have another 20-25% that's kind of like don't know where they're going to shake out when they grow up. And then I would say the top half of that generation are some real no bullshit, tough, work smart over work hard. Actually, some of the only good advice probably Bill Gates ever gave, type people that I've ever come across. I've had amazing experiences with a lot of Gen Z. And by the way, every single person that works with me is Gen Z, all of them. And if I could have 5 people, including Christian the Venezuelan, who are from that generation, who work like them and duplicate that out, we're going to be in business here. And I think that they're a braver generation than the millennials for sure, by a lot. And I think that they're like trying to stop the buck and they're saying, no, this is bullshit. This whole like the boomers always just saying, you have no idea how easy you have and shit. It's actually bullshit. And I'm not one to be like, let's just complain about everything and sit back and wait for the world to come to us and stuff like that. But you have to ask real questions when I can hire a girl who's a year out of college, who was a major minor with a fucking 4.0 GPA from a great college, who's had 11 jobs since she was 13 years old, was a supervisor at Six Flags by the time she was 18, is a self-starter, go-getter who was still working the same restaurant job that she had in college and applied to 500 jobs and could barely get an interview. You need to ask the question as to why that's happening.
What's going on?
Yeah. I talked to another kid who I would describe as a real self-starter, self-motivated individual. He's going and giving plasma twice a week for 2 hours in the morning, waiting in line because it's $45 a pop. So you can look at costs, you can look at inflation, you can look at how it is not kept up with wages and livable wages, and then just pull everything back, put aside some of the generational arguments for a minute, and let's look at our evolution, literal biology. It is a financial decision for most people to have a fucking child.
Right.
Like, to quote a guy who I'm going to have on the podcast soon, who had a really viral clip that I just fucking loved. He's an AI researcher. He said, do you know how much you have to beat up a mammal to make it not want to reproduce? There's a lot of things that go into that. It's an amazing line. Shout out Connor. But like, this is a real fucking problem. And I've always been someone that has some respect for older generations and hearing perspectives of people who have lived through things that I haven't, and I haven't given that up. I still do treat it that way on certain things. But when it comes to the economic wealth gap divide and the death of the middle class and the death of some opportunity for people to live a good life, I'm not talking about people that want to go start a company and be the greatest at something in some field, which there are a subset of people that want to do that. And I still think America is the best opportunity on earth to do that, to be very clear. But like for everyone else who wants to live the real American dream, which is do a job you enjoy, marry a girl you love, have a nice big family, hopefully a house in the suburbs with a little yard, and you're not saying hello, welcome to Walmart when you're 95. That's all they want. And that is looking a lot less attainable, and the math backs it up. And so that is the point I'd like to make. And instead of just being like, fuck all the boomers and shit like that, we can joke about some stuff like that, but like at the end
I'm
of the
happy
day,
to joke about it.
I want to pull it back and be like, okay, let's talk about fixing this. And part of that is there needs to be a little bit of humble pie from the older generations, particularly the boomers, to be like, okay, maybe we didn't get it all right. Maybe we need to talk about this a little bit. Maybe I don't need to hold on to my $4 million house until I die so the government can touch me for fucking half of it on the way out the door. So you fuck the generation just when you're dead as well. That is what I want to talk about. And I think this is going to be the start of a greater conversation that continues. And hopefully we can add, we'll do it in our comedic lens like we always do. I think that helps. It's entertaining. But like, hopefully, between Deef and I doing it on the weekends and talking about it on some podcasts, we can add to the conversation and actually try to find some common ground and some solutions here on our little corner of the internet. And then hopefully a lot of other people with platforms or talking about it in the public sphere can be encouraged to do the same. And together, maybe we can actually slightly move the ball forward in a better way, because I don't think where we're at right now is sustainable for the growth of our society. I'm looking here in America, but I could say that about other places around the world for sure as well.
Had you ever thought about leaving the United States? Because I feel like I'm hearing that more than I ever have. I'm sure you hear it a lot more than I do.
Yes. So I have not. I love it here. I'm very grateful to be born here. I did live in Italy and study there when I was in college. Love it over there. But like, this is where I'm from. This is where I want to be. And like I said, when you have a dream to do something in particularly great, like you want to be the best in a field, like I do, and like I've wanted to be since day one, yeah, this is the best place to do that by a lot. That said, Michael, it's a great point. I actually have a family member who is going to move to Europe, and she wants to live a good, happy middle-class life, work the job that's on her expertise, and she can live better, in my opinion, and obviously in her opinion, going to where she's going to live in Italy. And that's not something you would have even said 10 years ago. And it's a big problem, because America is built on being the land of opportunity. And opportunity doesn't just mean winner take all. I'm going to go be a gazillionaire. Yes, that's an opportunity, but like the opportunity of like a better life, a happy life, the thing I laid out, with the family and a job you enjoy, and you can do it and do it a little more unperturbed than you could other places. But yeah, it's a concern. And when I was over in Italy in June, one of the people I made friends with over there, this kid Lorenzo in Florence, he's a business guy. Like, he opted against going to college. He's about 22, 23. He's in the real estate business. He's a hustler who does other jobs on the side, runs a family restaurant that his uncle owns as well. And it's just like constantly moving. And he wants to get to America because he's got really big dreams. And I completely agree with him that the optimization of him being able to achieve those dreams of what he wants to do is way better in America than it is in Italy from a financial economic standpoint. But like I was saying a few minutes ago with my family member who's moving over to Italy for what she wants to do, maybe it's not. Like, I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying maybe it's not. I actually think she could do a better job living that life in Italy. And that's scary.
The other thing that you've said, and if I'm saying it wrong, correct me, you don't have politicians that are running for anything on your show.
No.
Why?
Treat them like mushrooms. Feed them nothing. Keep them in the dark. I have to be able to more likely shred or praise people without skin in the game. So I've always had a rule: if you're running for office or actively in office, I don't want to do it. I think that's a lesson I've learned watching people in front of me and watching how that plays out over time. That's another thing. There's mistakes that I don't have an excuse to make because I've had the example set in front of me by trailblazers who had to go make that mistake because there was no example or precedent in front of them. And I can tell you, looking all the way at the top at Joe Rogan, I don't know Joe Rogan. I've never talked with him. I don't know how he thinks about this. If I were guessing, there are probably some political soirees that he just did where he just simply went to do a podcast in the past, not necessarily with all the different politicians he's had on, but with certain people that he probably wouldn't want to do again if given that opportunity. Right. And so I never say never on things. And I've been careful to say that, like, maybe I can't read a crystal ball and what the future is. Maybe there is something in the future where it kind of is what it is. A guy like Joe Kent ran for office and did not make it, and then worked in the public sphere where I would not have had him on the podcast if he was still there. But once he left and was a dissident going against things he had seen, that was fine for me to do. I didn't have any hesitation on that whatsoever. But yeah, I've turned him down in the past, and I just turned down one a few weeks ago again. But I just don't have an interest in that. I genuinely don't like most politicians. I think there's a certain type of person that is drawn to that role, usually talentless, sleazy, and wants to at least appear to have power to feel good about themselves. I know that's not all of them, but more of them tend to lean that way. And I'd rather not have to be the one to figure out which ones are the exception to the rule. But yeah, I don't like politicians. When I go and I vote, I write in journalist abstain for every single roll down to dog catcher. I do not have skin in the game with that stuff. I have to be able to do my job. And when you pull the lever one way or another, you have skin in the game on things. And so that is something I feel really strongly about. And I think in hindsight, it was a tough break for a lot of my industry to get involved in the presidential election in 24, but I fully understand why they did. And I also understand that Kamala Harris and her campaign deserves a ton of, I guess, discredit, whatever you want to say, for refusing to do a lot of shows where she was asked and guys tried to have on both sides. And she deserves blame for that as well. Unfortunately, I hate this. I think it's bullshit. But we live in a world where at the surface level, before you can do something, how things look matter more than how they actually are. You can't get to how things actually are until you figure out how things look. And I hate that I ever have to think about that. That's not how I operate in my life as far as,
well,
like,
you become victims of your followers, for example.
100%. 100%.
So I had this odd experience on Twitter, for example. My Twitter feed was best when I had about 350 followers, and I would chat with them. It was really quite a good experience. Now it's big and bloated, and it's just not the same. It's like someone said it's a disease if you want the approval of people who you don't know. And then, but once in a while, someone follows you. You go, where the fuck did that come from? Like today, Jack Dorsey followed me. I go, wait. Someone explain this to me. So not long ago, Megyn Kelly followed me. And in the conservative Twitter bingo, that's jackpot material right there, right? And then she took the Tyler Robinson overwhelming evidence stance. Next thing you know, she's sitting there with the TPUSA guys in their horseshoe shape talking about stuff, and I'm going, what happened? At one point she seemed to be, bucking the system, and all of a sudden there she is doing the whole TPUSA thing, and so I complained about it in a podcast. I said, now I don't know what to do with her. I don't know how to even think about her. And I get an email, which I quadruple checked the source, was a person who was one of the founding executives of Fox News, one of the founding executives. And this person said, do not trust her.
Look, if I don't know people personally, I don't look one way or the other. I judge people based on when I meet them. A lot of people say a lot of things. A lot of people pretty much everyone has some sort of bias or intention behind the things they do. I think something that is really toxic on the internet that, again, I'm not going to change. It's not up to me. So I have to live in the world that we have, is that people get really toxically into these camps on various issues. And then, see no evil, hear no evil at anything that someone with an even slightly other perspective could have. And I don't think it's helpful, but that is the world we are living in now. I've always kind of, in my little corner, threaded the needle of just kind of having on a little bit of everything. and also a lot of different topics and things like that, things that completely veer away from the public sphere, which I do a lot of, and I think this year has just been crazy with some stories. So obviously it's been heavier on that in the entire industry with people just trying to follow whatever the fuck this news cycle is. But like, I just wish we could turn down the temperature on things. That said, I understand how we got here. And I also understand where people have less hope at things and righteously so, very righteously so, less or no trust in things. I totally get that. And I'm with you on that. But I've used this example before. If you were standing in front of the most sprawling historical mansion ever made, I mean, this thing it's a Kevin O'Leary data center size. I mean, 60 square miles, the whole bit. It was built in the ancient Roman Empire on the best piece of land overlooking the best part of the Aegean Sea, whatever. And you get up to it and someone says to you, fuck, there's been an asbestos and termites breakout in there. And it's everywhere. It's not in every single room, but it's all over this entire thing. And we got two choices. We can either say, fuck it, that's too much work. Let's burn the whole thing down, which, by the way, feels really good. It's nice to watch a nice bonfire, too. And maybe later regret the fact that all the history was burned in the ash with it. Or we could fucking be like, oh, my God, this blows. But we could stick on a hazmat suit. And as long as it takes, go room by room and ice out all the rooms that are filled with asbestos and termites and somehow preserve the structure. It is much more fun to say burn it down. It is something I enjoy personally saying as well, and I'm with the people on that. I try to pull myself back and say, let's get the hazmat suits on and let's fix things that way and go room by room. And right now, we need to go through a lot of rooms. Especially, I'll just look in this country, but I could say around the world with leadership and stuff like that. We need to go through a lot of rooms and we need to clean out a lot of asbestos and rot across our institutions, across all the pillars of society. Whether it's even bullshit like entertainment and stuff like that, like clean it out. I understand why people don't want to do that, though. And I kind of fight that battle in my head of how to go about handling that. And all I have is a little microphone in my studio to give my point of view, and people can take it or not. You know what I mean?
How much time do you allocate? How much time are you going to allocate towards focusing attention on the midterms?
Not a lot.
I'm not even gonna.
I don't care about it at all. I don't
care about it at all.
Yeah, I don't like domestic politics. I'm not into that. We do geopolitical stuff that happens overseas. To quote Richard Nixon, that's where the real power is. So I look at that stuff, but no, I don't enjoy Republican and Democrat politics. I think it's all gay and retarded, and that's just not my lane.
You okay for another question or two, Julian?
Yeah.
Dave, do you want to add something to this?
I think the economic look is interesting. We were, I believe, by definition, going to have a boom with the boomers because of just purely demographic arguments. And the problem is, as the boomers go through the system, we are by definition going to have a bust for this very same reason. We have created an economic system by, I hate using trite metaphors, but kicking the can down the road, by putting off the repair work. It's like someone says, oh, we haven't had an earthquake in California in 100 years. What's to worry about? And I go, that's what's to worry about right there. And so as a consequence, I think the bust is going to be big. It's going to be protracted. It's not going to be some headline producing, 2 or 3 days of nothing but nonstop dropping. I think it's going to be a decades long bust. I happen to be one of the few people who thinks the best thing we could do is raise interest rates to cause. So when you go to buy a house, you sit down with a realtor, and the realtor says, how much do you have in the bank? How much do you earn? And here are the interest rates. Here's what you can afford. And you go buy that fucking house. So if you can afford $400K, I guarantee you and your wife are going to buy a house for $399.9 thousand. And so it turns out there's a direct correlation between the interest rates and the cost of the housing. And they dropped rates to near zero. And as a consequence, the cost of everything for this young generation soared. as you said. And so they can't afford anything. And so the solution to that problem is that the boomers are going to have to give up capital gains on their houses and on their equity portfolios. And because you have to make room for the younger generation to buy them at fair value, which is the problem. Now, one of the funniest compliments I ever gotten, Mike actually picked up on it. This made it really funny, was when Milo Yiannopoulos jumped in and he said something to me. I must have read it 3 times to try to figure out whether he's being a compliment, whether he's complimenting me or not. He says to me, I've always thought that you were a traitor to your generation. And he said, I think you just might survive the purge.
No, he said he said in the Great Boomer Purge, you might be spared, is what he said.
Yeah. You might be spared. And I read it about 3 times, and then I responded back. I said, well, that's really nice to hear, Milo, because I was kind of hoping to survive the purge. It was a very strange comment, but the boomers have to give up their gains because they're an inflated paper gains. They're not real net worth. They're not real wealth. They're not
incentivized to do that, though.
They're not incentivized, but I'm not sure it's the boomers' job to be incentivized. I think the free market's job is to do it for them. Right now, the markets are overvalued by record amounts.
For sure.
And as I've said to so many goddamn people, I said, there's never been an example of an asset class that got way overvalued that didn't find its way back to cheap.
Right.
It will find its way back to cheap. And that is going to be a sort of 80+% slow rot, horrifying. It's going to be, to use Israeli terms, double tap of investors over and over and over, because the dip buyers will show up and then we have to shoot them. Then new dip buyers will show up and we have to shoot them. And finally, you'll reach some point where an entire generation says, I'm never buying that shit again.
Right.
Never. And that will be a good time to buy that shit.
Right.
So I look forward to your economic theme.
Yeah, we're going to get it. I enjoy that stuff. I think it's important to talk about.
Well, you were a banker, so maybe you won't survive the purge.
Not like that. I don't like that stuff. I hate the banking side of it. I like the dynamics of behavior.
Right.
Which had nothing to do with the job I did on Wall Street. But I like the dynamics of behavior when it comes to social, cultural, and political trends that occur, for sure.
And you can't understand the economy without understanding the politics. And you can't understand the politics without understanding human nature.
For sure.
And you have to read books on narcissism and sociopathy. And by the way, the book I was going to suggest you read when I asked you, do you read, is Why We Sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, that's the book you want to read, because it correlates, it explains and correlates all the health problems that we have due to poor sleep.
I agree. I prioritize my sleep like crazy these days. I started that December 28th, 2023. Yep.
Well, I learned after I read the book, the first thing I did is when I'd wake up in the morning to take a piss, I have another suggestion. You take pit stops in your podcast the way a boomer would. I've watched you.
I have a horrible bladder.
What is that about? What is that about?
I've had a horrible, it's actually, some of it's genetic. I've had a horrible bladder my whole life, but I also drink like 140 ounces of water a day. So
okay. I was wondering if you had an issue there that you might address. There are issues that we have, like you said, that you don't know you have. I was a sleepwalker and talker until I was 30. And it turns out I jumped out second-story windows. I almost drove a car, pissed all over the wall, moved furniture, all sorts of shit. And everyone said, oh, that's just Dave. That's normal. That's who Dave is. And it turns out, no, it's a disorder. Mm-hmm. And it's treatable, and it's treated now, and I'm doing just fine. I haven't sleepwalked in 35 years.
Good.
So there's a lot of these things that you don't know about. And what you'll find is the medical community doesn't know about them either, because they're all formulaic now. The doctors follow protocols. If the protocol doesn't involve a blood test, a scan, or a prescription, they don't know about it. Right. And so you have to be your own healthcare expert.
Absolutely, I agree.
As you've learned that. I think it's going to be a potentially unexciting several decades of correction. I don't think it's going to be fast. I don't think it's going to be headlines. There could be some spectacular headlines along the way, but I think it's going to take the Nikkei. There's a great example. The Nikkei, it took 35 years to get back to even.
Mm-hmm. Japan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Julian, last question. What's next for your show? Where do you want to go with this? You're on a hell of a mountain now, man.
You are in a mountain now, right now.
I appreciate that. It doesn't feel that way. I'm just kind of like in it every day. But no, since day one, I've only ever had one goal. I want to be the greatest to ever do what I do, and that's never changed. That's the only. I'm not one of these guys that writes down in 2 years I want to be here. I want to have this. That's just that works for some people. Great, and there's some real psychology with that, and that's awesome. That's never been me. I like, I'll have like a broad North Star, and then just a lot of things have to happen on the way, and you got to be willing to push through it all and learn when you fuck up, be really self-reflective at every moment of it, and also surround yourself with great people. And I feel like I've been doing a good job of those things for 6.5 years, and that's going to be the metric to keep me going over the next 6.5 years to really explode the growth. But I do feel like, I don't know, it feels like a really dangerous time for me in a good way, because it's like I'm such an outsider. I do not have a lot of friends in my industry at all. I would love to. I've just always been like kind of on my own island here, and it feels like the show is still like a really well kept secret in a way. And I think it'll be a real test when that's no longer the case. It's easy to sit here when you're kind of slowly just creeping up the back edges of the charts and stuff, and then when you're in the middle of it and you're really in the middle of the arena, you see how you respond. But I'd like to think when that happens, I'll be ready to roll and roll with the punches. But yeah, that's my North Star. I want to talk about everything. I want to have every topic on my show. I don't want to tell people what to think. I want people, they'll hear my opinions on some things for sure, but it's always been about just take what I say, take what the guest says, take what I'm saying on the weekend sometimes with Deef, do with it what you will, and make your own calls. But that's, at the end of the day, I want people to feel like it's just a conversation they get to be a part of, that they just can go about their day. They don't have to talk with us. But yeah, that's a long-winded way of just saying I'm very present with today, knowing I just want to continue to be on the pathway to make that initial delusional dream come true.
Do you find it hard with all the people that you've talked to and all the experience and the knowledge that you've gained from it when you go out in the real world? And I ask this because I struggle with this. When you're out in the real world with your regular friends, different life, do you feel like people are blissfully unaware of what's going on? And how do you separate that between your professional life of what you do and when you're socializing or out and about?
I think it's a mix. I think sometimes we're over aware of things that maybe we don't have to be, and sometimes they're under aware. But everyone, they have their own lived experience, they have their own priorities and stuff, and I've always had a lot of grace for that. Most of that doesn't bother me. It really takes like my dad being like the most, I love my dad, but the most prototypical, like really wild boomer about some things to rile me up, if you will. But nah, most of the time I don't, I walk out of this studio and people are just people and they all got their own priorities. And, if you run into someone who's an asshole who thinks they know everything
that never
about
happens. That never
no,
happens.
but I'm saying, like, when they actually think they know everything about everything and, you watch them tell other people to shut the fuck up. Yeah. In your head, you're like, well, that guy's retarded. But what are you going to do? Like, there's a fake Keanu Reeves quote. I wish it was real. It's one of those fake meme quotes that they said was
sort of like Abraham Lincoln on the internet, right?
Right. But yeah, Keanu Reeves is like the greatest bars ever dropped on the internet, but none of it's ever real. But I'd like to say he thought this. And it was, I'm at a point in my life where someone walks up to me and says 2 + 2 = 5. I'm like, great, man. I'm happy for you. Have a great life. I just don't have the energy for it. And I think, most people aren't like that either. Most people, they're asking me what I'm seeing. And then sometimes I'll be like, if I've been covering a hard topic that week, like this week was Kirk, right? So this is a prime example of that. Like other weeks, it'll be like ancient history and stuff, and that's fun. But like,
Brands.
Brands was fun.
Oh my God, that was a great interview.
But most of the time I'm just like, all right, cool. It doesn't bother me too much.
Well,
I find podcast hosts to be stunningly knowledgeable or stunningly aware. I'm not sure knowledge is the right word, but stunningly aware of the issues because they talk to so many different people. And so I read some pretty bizarre shit. And I'm amazed at how many podcast hosts are conversant in that pretty bizarre shit. And it comes from chatting spontaneously with smart people. I live my life by maxims. I have all sorts of maxims. I've had students come back and say, I'll never forget all your similes and metaphors. And one of the things I say to myself when I'm making a big decision, like when you said, fuck it, let's do podcasting. I ask the question, if this goes very, very wrong, will you forgive yourself? If the answer is no, don't do it.
Right.
And so, I decided not to go to med school and to go to grad school. My dad was a little shook because as far as he was concerned, that was med school was a guarantee that you'll have a good tea time on Thursdays. Right. And I realized I didn't want a good tea time on Thursdays because I too played golf. And I asked that question basically. I said, look, if this doesn't work, I go off to grad school. By the way, I went to school at Columbia, so I do understand New York. New York is a phenomenal place to live for a while. I don't think I'd want to live there my whole life, but I was there for about 2.5 years. And
this is my element here.
Right. And the food. Oh, the food. Oh, it's so fantastic. Right. But I knew I could just get out of grad school if I had to go to med school, whatever. I just so I'm not as free spirited as you. I'm a maybe a little less spontaneous, but I did tend to do some crazy shit, and so
I think it worked out for you.
It did work out. Actually, scientifically, I went in a very bizarre direction that people told me I would fail, and then I did not. That sort of thing. So it works fine. It was a great conversation, and now I do know who you are because you were a mysterious figure to me, and I'm glad we had this chat.
Julian, I came to the conclusion, Julian, you're not a plant. Right? How many times have you been called that? How many times?
Plant? Is that what we?
No, I don't know. That's the term now. Everybody's a plant.
No.
I didn't think you were, but that's the thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mike.
No, you did not smell of plant.
How many times do you hear that though? Everybody's a plant. Everybody's a plant.
Everyone says that about every content creator.
You get called that? Do you get called that?
Always.
Yeah, that's why I was joking. Julian picked up on it.
So it gets me. People say the same. They say I'm some psyop or something. My son turns out to run the events for the Council on Foreign Relations, so that always gives them something to work with.
They'll find something and say this thing, but that thing, and I ain't going. There's nothing I can do about it. People are going to say what they're going to say.
That's right. If you're working for the enemies, we're not at any risk.
I don't even know what that means.
Julian, where can people find you?
I'm going to pretend to know what that means. Not know what that means, Dave.
Julian, where can people find you?
Say hi to Deef too. Say hi to Deef for me.
I will. On YouTube, Julian Dorey, Julian Dorey Clips, Julian Dorey Daily for the 1 hour podcast. On Spotify, it's just Julian Dorey, and you can get me on Instagram at Julian D. Dorey and on X at Julian Dorey.
Dave, I know we can find you under your desk and on X.
Yeah, David B. Collum.
That's it.
Guys,
thank you for having me, guys.
And now apparently on Substack, thanks to you tagging me on Substack.
Yeah.
I have a dead Substack account, and my email box filled up this week with Substacks. I go, what the fuck just happened to my email box?
I tagged him.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it, and look forward to Julian following your work. And great job, man. I look forward to your next interview.
Thank you.
Mic drop.
Appreciate you guys.
Mic drop.